Hello and welcome to the Lower Makefield Township Board of Supervisors meeting, February 17th, 2021. The time is 7:31. Today, if you'd like to dial in to make public comment, please dial 646-558-8656, and you can enter the meeting ID 867-5958-4045, followed by the hash or pound sign. Please follow along on the agenda on our lmt.org under Board of Supervisors. And if you are following along on Facebook or YouTube, if you have a public comment, please call in a little bit early because there's about a 10-second delay. And I'd like to pass the meeting over to Chair Suzanne Blundy.
Good evening, everyone. I would ask that we bring this meeting to order and that you join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, with that, let's start with the roll call. Dan, are you here?
I am, and if you happen to see any dog stuff on me, please let me know. It's been a long last couple of hours.
We're not going to touch that. We're going to move right along. Are you here? John is here.
Yes.
James, are you here?
Yes.
Thank you. Fred?
I'm here.
Fred is here. I'm here. We are all accounted for, and thank you. With that, I want to start the meeting off a little bit out of typical order so that we can honor this year's last year's 2020 Environmental Stewardship Award, which is being given to Mark and Dara Bortman. So hopefully Mark and Dara are going to be able to join us virtually, as will the EAC. So we could bring them in. There's Jim. You're on mute, Jim. Still on mute.
All right, can you hear me?
Now we can hear you.
Oh, okay, all right. Now I got the hang of it. Anyway, hello, everybody. And my name is Jim Bray, for the record, and I live in Lower Makefield Township. And tonight we are presenting the 2020 Environmental Stewardship Award to Mark and Dara Bortman of Lower Makefield Township. Mark and Dara are the owners of the Exact Solar business that's been around for quite a few years in Lower Makefield Township, and they are a local solar panel installer. That's not the reason Mark is receiving the award tonight, but Suzanne is going to get into that since Suzanne is the official presenter. But Mark and Dara are with us here tonight, as well as Faith Zerba from the Delaware Riverkeeper Network. Before I turn over the official presentation to Suzanne, though, I'd just like to outline briefly to our listeners the parameters of the Environmental Stewardship Award. It's given annually, and it has been so for the last 10 to 12 years, to a local business, organization, or individual that has contributed in a noteworthy, meaningful way to the environment in Lower Makefield Township. If the business, organization, or an individual is a for-profit business, then the $1,000 stipend is given to one of the local nonprofits that are specified in the award write-up. They happen to be Bowman's Hill Wildflower Preserve, the Friends of the Delaware Canal, the Delaware Riverkeeper, or the Friends of the 5 Mile Woods. And actually last year, the Friends of the 5 Mile Woods were the award winners. Now, at this stage, I would like to turn over the official presentation to Suzanne. And after Suzanne talks about the award, I think it would be pertinent if Faith Zerba from the Delaware River Keeper Network say a few words, and then Mark and Dara. Now, I should mention that the Delaware River Keeper has been Mark and Dara's choice this year as far as the $1,000 stipend award winner. So with that, I'll turn the official presentation over to Suzanne.
Thank you, Jim, and thank you, Mark and Dara. If we were able to all be together, there'd be a more formal presentation, including Jim. I don't know if you have the plaque still. Do you want to show?
No, actually, I dropped the plaque. So
okay, so we've already handed over the plaque. Very nice, good job. But it's truly my honor to be here tonight and to not only be a part of this, but also the proclamation that the township is issuing on behalf of Mark and Dara. And I actually was thinking for a second, like it really should be, we should include the kids in this, because Mark, Dara, and their children share a commitment to our environment and to our community that, to my experience, is unparalleled. And specifically, the reason we're calling them out tonight is not just for the work they've done for the township as volunteers throughout their I'll just say more than 5 years, to be polite, but specifically for all they've done to help organize the various recycle events, and very specifically the styrofoam one, which would not happen if it wasn't for their efforts. Not only do they volunteer their company's resources, and it's become quite the event. We see repeat people coming with piles of styrofoam that they have saved. They come and then they ask when the next styrofoam event is going to be. And that's all done because Mark and Dara allow their company, they furnish us trucks, they furnish us drivers who then take this styrofoam up to vendors who use it in processing sometimes furniture pieces, sometimes picture frames. But the bottom line is it's not going into the landfill. And that's really, that's an effort you guys have spearheaded with the EAC. I know you've been involved in other recycling projects as well, and the township is better off because of your efforts. So I won't read the whole proclamation. The township staff wants you to know that they made special efforts to print it on recycled paper, but it will be formally delivered. And it's really just an acknowledgement that whereas for the significant contributions that you've made to protect resources and the sustainability by reducing waste in our environment through your efforts, we thank you and really appreciate what you've done. And I'm going to override you, Jim, and ask Dara and Mark to speak before we hear from their charity of choice. So if you guys wouldn't mind saying a few words, that would be great.
Thank you very much, Suzanne and Jim. And thanks to all the supervisors. We know that you guys work very hard as well. And all the members of the EAC, they do a great job in all the different projects that they take on to make our community better. So thank you, everyone.
Great. Riverkeeper?
It is an honor and a pleasure to first meet many of you virtually. We were ecstatic to hear the news. $1,000 goes a really long way for our work at the Delaware Riverkeeper Network. Whether we're doing monitoring in the Neshaminy Creek or doing restoration projects or Exact Solar, hey, we're doing a lot right now on really keeping fracking out of the Delaware River Basin, stopping the liquid natural gas terminal down in Gibbstown, doing everything we can. And of course, connecting it to plastic also, right? Getting plastic out. And it's wonderful to hear all the recycling efforts that you have all been doing. And something like this is just really incredible when you see an EAC, active members of the community that are out working hard daily, having the meetings that you have on the grindstone, day after day, week after week, and accomplishing the wonderful things that you're doing. So we cannot do it alone. You know, we are thankful that we were the recipient this year, and we look forward to working with all of you. And at Delaware Riverkeeper Network, anyone is a member of DRN. So please, you know, if you'd like to learn more about us, you know, we're always happy to have you be part of the volunteer monitoring team or the macroinvertebrate team. But we are so grateful for all that you do, and we're grateful for the township for setting up such a great program that can highlight and kind of give back to the organizations that are in the region. So we are very thankful, and it is wonderful to meet you, and we wish we were there to hug you. But hopefully sometime we will be soon.
Great. We really appreciate the great work that the Delaware Riverkeeper Network does. If I remember correctly, they're helping to keep healthy and protect the Delaware River, which I think is a water source for 17 million people. So it's really important work that you're doing. So we really appreciate it. And that's why we wanted you to have the money.
Thank you so much.
Great. Well, thank you, everyone. Is there anybody else who'd like to make a comment?
Yeah, I just want to make well, you know, maybe some of the board members want to comment, but before everybody is finished, I'd like to just say one parting comment.
Anybody else? Or yes, go ahead, Dan.
Sure. Hi, Bortmans. It's great seeing you here. As a former member of the EAC, I love seeing other members of the EAC at these meetings and talking about the good environmental work that everyone's doing. I know not only, you know, you obviously are doing great work for the township when it comes to volunteerism and helping us with our various recycling programs that I take full advantage of, especially around the holidays on more than one occasion. I know, Jim, I've seen you there, and I've seen your trucks packed to the gills more than once. But, you know, I pay special attention to the good work that you're doing because, like you, the environment is my business, really. It's my passion, my education, my everyday, the world I work in. So when I see what you're doing such good for the township, I love to see that, and I just want to keep supporting you. So thank you, and please keep up the good work.
Any other supervisors?
Yes, Suzanne, I just want to say thank you. Plain and simple, thank you so much for your efforts. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, James. And John, I saw your hand go up.
Yeah, I wanted to thank you guys. You guys are a tremendous asset to the community. And it's a shame with COVID, I have not seen you in person in a while, because normally I see you at events, whether it's Bowman's Tower or farm events. And I'm just so amazed. You guys have done just such great work for the community, and we really appreciate it. It makes such a huge difference. And also, not only, it's even when you're not recycling, you start to think, geez, do I really need all this styrofoam in my life? And thanks for giving me that thought. So thank you and congratulations.
Okay. There's nobody else. Then Jim, do you want to say a few last words?
Yes. Firstly, I want to congratulate Mark and Dara again for the good work over the last several years with the collection. In addition, I want to personally thank all the members of the Board of Supervisors for giving the EAC an ample enough budget each year to make events like this possible. As you can see, the money that we receive is very well spent. If it's not giving the Environmental Stewardship Award, it might be purchasing alligator bags for trees in the township, or recycling bins or whatever. But again, thank you very much to the BOS, and also thank you everybody for the kind words that you said tonight about Mark and Dara. And I hope all of you enjoy the rest of the evening.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you. Okay. Well, with that, always nice to start on a happy note. We'll just move along to Kurt. Do you have any COVID-19 update?
I don't have an update. However, staff continues and has worked to set up the meeting schedule for our committees to, like EAC, to continue to work safely and remotely. And the plan will be to continue on with that. moving forward, at least for the time being. That's all I have.
Thank you. Monica, we're up to agenda item number 6 already, community announcements.
Yes, we have quite a few today. I'm going to start out. We have a couple slides. John, if you could pull them up, please. First community announcement would be the Veterans Committee is looking for veterans who have served or continue to serve, whoever lived in Yardley Borough or Lower Mayfield Township, to submit their names for the gold plaques that go on the side of the Veterans Monument. We're about halfway full for the next plaque, and you can see the image of the plaques there. And we also, on the next slide, you can see the bricks that are on the ground there. There are commemorative special veterans bricks that you can order if you visit veteransquare.org. You can buy a brick today, and we're still selling those. Our Veterans Committee is still selling those. So that's it as far as the slides go. Another fun thing that we're doing in our department right now is we're going to do an outreach to some of our seniors. There are a number of seniors who still are at home from COVID, and we still continue to call them through the partnership with the police department. Our department is calling all of the seniors, and we have decided that we're going to, Manor Care actually reached out to us to see if they could donate anything or give back to the community. So they've donated a bunch of fun games and activities that seniors can do in their home that we're actually going to deliver to seniors' homes. And right now we're asking for donations of activities. It could be books, it could be coloring books, it could be colored pencils. So please call our department 267-274-1111 to see what would be, a proper donation and to see when to drop them off. So we're looking forward to that, and we'll be delivering them on St. Patrick's Day. We still have digital recreation opportunities right now. Information can be found on our website. You could at lmt.org under Parks and Recreation. Pool registration is open. Visit lmt.org to register. We're going to do something different this year, but we're trying to do some more remote events. So we're going to do a community-wide egg hunt the week before Easter. And what we're going to do is hide eggs throughout all of our parks and hope that you go out and you find them. And when you do, there'll be a slip to see how you can pick up your prize. So you pick up your prize at the community center if you find one of these eggs. There are going to be a few golden eggs hidden, which is going to be a bigger prize. So it's kind of our version of an egg hunt this year, and we really hope that people get out there, participate, and take pictures and put it on our social media. Next on the agenda, it says 10-week challenge. It's actually a Stepping into Summer 6-week challenge that we will be starting in March. It's going to be a walking challenge. We challenge you in the community to walk 10,000 steps a day. And then you submit your logs at the end of the 6-week period, and you can get a medal. So when you register, you'll get a t-shirt. If you complete the 10,000 steps a day, you get a medal at the end. We'll be putting out promotional information about that sometime soon. And I don't see anybody in the waiting room right now for public comment, for community announcements. But during this portion of the agenda, youth organizations may call in to make special announcements. So in the future, if you do have any special announcements, please be sure to call in during this time. And that's all I have, Suzanne.
Thank you, Monica. Do any of the supervisors have anything that they want to announce at this time? Oh, well, you're not a supervisor, Kirk, but you can also speak. If you unmute.
Thanks. Sorry, I meant to do that before you did that. I just want everyone to be aware that we will have our road crew in starting very early in the morning, where there is a call again for more snow. So we will have people out just for the board's sake and for the community in case there becomes questions. We are now beginning to have some challenges purchasing rock salt, getting rock salt. So we have about 600 tons on hand. We typically would store at this time of the year between 12 and 1,500 tons. So we're not going to really hold back. There'll be clearly enough. We use 300 to 400 to hit the town in a storm. So we have enough for now, but we've had to resort to hiring trucks to go pick up salt because deliveries are limited. And we'll continue to do that as aggressively as we can, but we will have people on staff very, very early to be out and about to attack this storm when it comes in the early hours tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Kurt. Okay, nothing else. We'll move along to agenda item number 7, approval of the minutes from February 3rd, 2021. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, James. Thank you, Dan. Any discussion? Monica, is there any public comment?
No public comment. I'm sorry about that.
It's okay, thank you. All right, well, with that, then I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye and raising your hand. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion passes 5-0. Moving on to item number 8. Fred, if you could please give us the treasurer's report.
I'll do the best I can.
Big shoes to fill.
I will start with the consideration of the December inter-fund transfers. Unfortunately, I do not have that number. Kurt, do you have that number?
The December transfers would be $2,610,734.58.
Okay. In that case, I will make a motion to approve the interfund transfers for December for $2,610,734.58.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, James. Any discussion? Any public comment?
No public comment.
With that, I call the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye and raising your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
And then consider the approval of the warrant list from February 2nd and for February 17th in the amount of $1,633,987.11.
Second.
I'm sorry, are those the right dates? I might have the wrong dates. February 1st and 16th or 2nd and 17th?
I'm sorry, the 16th.
That's right. That's when those are from, when those were printed. We picked the day that's actually run. You're approving it today, but those are the day those were run.
Correct, 16th, sorry.
So the motion is for the warrant list from February 1st and the warrant list from February 16th.
Correct.
Thank you. Okay, and James, I heard you second it?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Any discussion? Any public comment?
No public comment.
Thank you. Then all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye and raising your hand. Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
And then lastly, we will consider the approval of the January interfund transfers. And Kurt, could you give us that figure as well?
The amount is $708,921.28.
Do I have a motion? Second?
The motion, so moved.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you, James. All right. Any discussion? Any public comment, Monica?
There's no public comment.
All right. With that, I call the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye and raising your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Motion passes 5-0. Moving on to agenda item number 9, Parks and Rec. Monica?
I'm here. I'm going to share my screen real quick so you can everybody see?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm just going to quickly go through this to give you a quick update. No big pizzazz. I just wanted to let you know where we're at. I gave you a lot of timelines last time I presented. Okay, I'm having some slide issues. There we go. So as far as the administrative key dates, we're really on task. We're still working to hire a full management team. So we do have some continuous interviews and some discussions, but we haven't fine-tuned that yet. But we are working on it, and it's looking good. So And then we're up to, right on task, prep and send out employment packets. We're just done today. So that was a little bit late, but everything else is moving along. So that's good. We did have a nice staff information Zoom. I believe there were about 63 staff and potential new staff in the Zoom. There were a lot of really good questions, a lot of really good discussion. I'm really glad we did it. I actually am considering doing it every year now, just because the hiring process for a new young employee can be daunting. And I thought it was a really good back and forth conversation. And we're actually getting a lot of conversation along the way from the new employees, which is good. And then all the returning employee applications are due, and everything else is still, out there lying, waiting to go. As far as community, we did the survey like we discussed we were going to do on the 1st, finished on the 10th. We did the all call for potential staff that I discussed. Registration open is going quite well. I think there was this impression that we were planning to cut off registration. So we actually had double the normal registrants than we have ever had in the past in January. So that trend has continued, and it's looking very good as far as that goes. One thing we did add to this list is I created a frequently asked question sheet that's available on our website. So if anybody has any questions, they might want to check there first. I've also included, we have a whole reopening section on our website with all content with 2020 regulations from the county, from the state, CDC. We're trying to include as much information as so people can see where we're getting things from, that type of thing. We're including all of our videos on there of, public meetings. So we just wanted to make sure that the community can be included and involved. And, if they have any questions, they can kind of check there first. So we did a resident member information Zoom, which was very nice on the 10th. One of the biggest things that we want to make sure that the residents know right now is that we're heading into 2021, and it's a little early right now for all the new 2021 regulations. The county said March, now they're saying March, April timeframe that they're going to give us new guidelines. So we really are waiting on some of those guidelines before we put out some hard facts. So once we get those, we'll really develop our next set of questions and our next presentation based on some of those. But I believe the CDC and the state will also come out with some new guidelines heading into this 2021 season in that March, April timeframe. So that's kind of the trend we're seeing. Please remember that discount period ends on the 5th for our residents. So I would suggest if you would like to take advantage of that discount, please do so before the 5th so you can get it. Even if you're thinking about pulling out, register before the 5th. You'll get all the information and you can get a full refund all the way up until opening day. Maintenance, we haven't fully started yet, and snow is not helping us start, but we weren't planning to start really until March 1st. We did start looking at we're doing some minor bathroom repairs. So we're looking at those. We're ordering what is necessary for orders. There's some snack stand repairs. We're also ordering and scheduling those. That's in progress. And we're also working on COVID enhancements and modifications to keep the staff and the members safe. So those are some of the things we're kind of starting now, but really we're not really starting to dig in on the full. There's a more planning stuff going on now, planning and ordering. And then here's the rest of the key dates you see that lead to an opening day. So far, we're right on task. So that's really all I have. But if anybody has any questions, I would be glad to answer them.
Go ahead, Dan. Now you're on mute.
I'm not a cat, I swear. Thank you, Monica, for that. It's nice to see a schedule with check boxes next to it, with boxes getting checked. So that's to be applauded. And more to come. And you've got goals in mind, and that's great. The only question I have right now is generally how are we doing in terms of membership versus a standard year this year versus other years to date. I know we chatted about it a little bit, and it sounded like things were pretty positive. So I'm seeing if that trend is still going.
It is. It has slowed down to more normal levels. But yeah, right at that first month, I mean, we had so many all at once, and it was double the normal registration. So I have the feeling that it'll kind of slow down and even out as we move forward here.
But they're not, from what it sounds like, it's not. One of our concerns with the pool always when we have nice stuff like this is that numbers might be down because for whatever reason that impacts our budget. But in this case, it sounds like that side of things is actually pretty good in terms of meeting numbers to get enough memberships to cover budgets and whatnot. Right? Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, I did budget at a lesser amount in the end, so just to brace ourselves a little, because in the end, people may not feel comfortable. Still, even though they're ambitious now, when it comes down to brass tacks. So we'll see how it all pans out. But yeah, I would say that this was a very positive sign to see that people are very excited to get back. And it seems like people are very receptive for the most part of any modification that we need to do, to keep people safe. So that's really what we're focused on. It's keeping people safe, following rules and regulations as best we can, and just like everybody else, we want to open and be able to offer a good service.
And you're communicating that plan to everyone. So that's the key, right? So everyone here's what we're doing up front, so they can be well prepared for it. So that's very much appreciated. So thank you.
Any other comments? Is there any public comment?
No, there's no public comment.
Well, thank you, Monica, and I look forward to the continued progress on the reopening.
Okay, thank you, Suzanne.
All right, so moving along to agenda item number 10, which is the informal presentation on the Prickett Preserves. Do we have the presenters?
They're coming in now.
Okay, well, it's going to be a good meeting because they're all on mute. So obviously, there won't be much to say.
Well,
so Kurt, do you want to kick it off, or do you want to?
Steve, are we there? Hello? Is anyone?
I hear you.
Oh, okay. Thank you. My name is Steve Harris. I represent ELU DeLuca Yardley.
Now I don't hear you. You are now on mute.
How about now?
Now you're good.
Okay, thank you. My name is Steve Harris. I represent ELU DeLuca Yardley LLC and Shady Brook Investors LP, the developers of the Prickett Preserve at Edgewood. I'm here with Vince DeLuca, Bob Rosenthal and Bob Dwyer of those respective companies, Bill Reardon of Bowler, who's our engineer, Chris Williams of McMahon, who is our traffic engineer, and Seth Shapiro of Warrant Partners, who's done all of our presentations. We want to make a very brief, I hope, presentation tonight. We're not looking to get into the weeds to discuss the intricacies of the development, but give you an overview of where we've been since the last time we were before you. As you all know, I'm sure we filed an application for a preliminary as final land development plan approval. And last Friday, or I should say, we received input from all of your consultants and your advisory committees. As a result, we revised the plans and submitted them last Friday. So clearly, none of the committees and none of the consultants have had a chance to review them. So we're not planning to go through, as I said, the weeds of the issues. What we want to do is just tell you where we've been and where we're going. Now, one of the things that we want to start with, we met with the Planning Commission. They recommended approval of the plan, but there were concerns and issues raised with regard to the pedestrian crossing over I-295 and the mid-block crossing. We had a meeting today, a staff meeting out on the site to discuss those issues. So we're going to start with reviewing those issues. And we want to update you on the plan as far as the landscaping and those kinds of items that we've updated since the approval, or since the preliminary plan approval. So I think what we want to do, if we can, we've got that good-looking guy, Chris Williams, there on the screen, and update you on where we are on the pedestrian crossing over I-95, particularly with regard to the potential mid-block crossing and a permanent barrier on the I-295 bridge, separating the multi-use path from the travel lanes. So I'll turn it over to Chris, if I may. This is Chris Williams of McMahon Associates, our traffic engineer.
Great, thank you, Steve. So I seem to have lost my connection on my computer, so I had to call in from my cell phone. Does everybody see the exhibit or the presentation?
No, because I lost my ability to share.
Okay.
So hold on a second. Give me a second. I'll have this fixed in a second.
No problem.
Okay. All right. So hold on. Let me pull this up again. Okay. Let's do that. Now I'm going to share the screen. Share that. And then go. All right, does everybody see the presentation now?
Yes.
Can you put it in presentation?
Yes. We good?
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Seth. So good evening, everybody. We do want to provide an update with regard to the path along Stony Hill Road over I-295. So you'll recall, it's been some time since we've been before you, but previously we were proposing to build this path along the primary site frontage, which is still proposed, but we were proposing to cross at the signalized intersection of Township Line Road and Stony Hill Road in order to then connect into the existing trail that runs along the south side of Stony Hill Road towards Edgewood Village. So where we are today, we've received feedback from the township, and we've been asked to explore a more direct connection between the site and specifically from the apartments over to Edgewood Village. So at this time, we are still evaluating the viability of this connection, but if feasible, what we would show you tonight, or some version of it, is what we would like to pursue. And it consists of a more direct connection between the site and Stony Hill Road. So we did have a field meeting today, as Mr. Harris indicated, with township staff to review this latest change. The exhibit before you shows, first of all, on the south side of Stony Hill Road in a brown or burnt orange color, that is the existing trail that runs along Stony Hill Road. So this slide shows in green, it shows the median along the center of Stony Hill Road, which is the same as the board has seen before. That is not new. The purpose of this median is to change the character of Stony Hill Road in order to create a gateway feature, also for traffic calming, to slow traffic as they're entering into Edgewood Village. So that median is not a new concept, and that is something the board has seen before. So what's new, in bright orange, we're showing the new path. So this new path shows it beginning on the north side of Stony Hill Road, where you see the arrow. Ultimately, that would continue into the site and connect with the apartments. And so we have not yet quite figured out that alignment. We've got some more homework to do. We've got to figure out how to make the grading work, but that is something we are pursuing, and we would like to provide a direct connection from the apartments to this location on Stony Hill Road. So the trail would then cross Stony Hill Road, taking advantage of the median, and that would be our mid-block crossing in the vicinity of the median, whether it's at that location or whether it has to be relocated again. These are some things that we are looking at, but it would cross Stony Hill Road within the median, and then it would connect to the existing trail. Under this concept, it would connect to the existing trail on the south side of the road. So today, that existing trail terminates at the bridge with I-295, and that's always been the problem. As part of this concept envisions providing a single-faced barrier over the bridge. Also, it envisions reconfiguring the lanes on Stony Hill Road over the bridge so that we can then continue the trail or the path along the south side of Stony Hill Road. So the barrier, so the photos at the bottom of your slide just give sort of a representative sort of example of what the barrier may be able to look like. And there may be other options as well. But again, at this time, we are proposing a single-faced barrier concept to protect the path and the travel lanes, the moving lanes of traffic. We will continue to work with the township regarding the design of the trail and the look of the barrier. So this slide then shows the pedestrian facility continuing on the east side of the bridge, and then it would ultimately tie into the sidewalk that was recently built along Stony Hill Road by the Artis project, and that's all fairly new. So this is definitely a change from what you've seen before. This is our current proposal. This concept is the direct result of feedback from the township. It's not finalized yet. There is more for us to do to evaluate this design, and we are evaluating actually a few other options as well. We will continue to stay in touch with the township. We are working with township staff. We'll stay in touch with the board, and as this design moves forward, we will be back to share with you the progress that we're making. Also, something else to consider is that because Stony Hill Road is a state road, ultimately we will have to seek PennDOT approval for anything we do out here as well. And we have not yet advanced those conversations with PennDOT as far as we have at this point with the township. So that's where we are, and we'll have more to share as we continue to move forward.
Great. I don't know what works best for everybody. So do supervisors want to ask questions as each presenter is done, or do you want to wait until the end of the presentation? Then let's just keep rolling right along.
We can do that.
I think we'd like to now we have a PowerPoint presentation to show you what the updates have been to the overall design, a lot of the landscaping, that kind of thing. We cut out a lot of the slides. You don't need to see the Prickett family again. You don't need to see the various buildings. But we'd like Seth Shapiro to update you on how the plan is coming together in terms of the landscaping, the signage, and those sorts of items.
Thanks, Steve. Good evening, everybody. I'm Seth Shapiro. I'm a principal and director of planning and urban design for Barton Partners. We've met before. I am going to welcome Travis North from Bowler to jump in here as we talk about some of the landscape, because most of the changes that have been made regarding the plan since the time we presented to you last and now are in the landscape, and specifically actually in this center area here. Can everybody see the hand that I'm sort of swirling around here?
Yes.
In this area here, where we've really taken a run at what I think could really be a spectacular civic space. So this was a plan that we presented to you back in the fall. Since that time, we obviously have had full land development submissions, stacks and stacks and stacks of drawings, stormwater management, all of the things that go into an engineered plan. And this is now representative of the current plan today. There are additions of a pathway here down to the road as sort of a shortcut to the path here. We have not integrated this thing yet for Chris's presentation that he just had. We've looked at signage, but really what we've really been focusing on, at least from a design standpoint, is what's going on right in here. And so let's sort of jump into that. These are sort of the pedestrian ways, right? These are all the pedestrian ways within the plan itself. Again, adding this one, not yet getting this one in here yet, under study. So if we go to that central gathering space, right, this is what the plan is all about. And in fact, this view is actually from with the Wegmans behind us, looking towards that central space. This actual piece of it hasn't changed too much. What has changed is the central space that's ahead of us here. In this view, you can see the barn over here, the old Prickett house is over here, and you can see sort of that sort of shared parking area with bollards, that sort of gathering space. We're going to go up above that now, and this really shows the changes to this space that we've made. We now have a curvilinear path in here. We have a little sort of informal stage area with a bunch of seating walls and seating areas in here. And again, you can see how sort of this whole area could be sort of expanded and closed off to be, when we can all gather again for bigger gatherings. And again, once again, here's the barn. There'll be an addition on the barn. This is a view looking the other way into that space. Looking back, the Wegmans will be right over here. Again, that's sort of keeping the alley of existing trees. The large tulip tree that is here would remain in place. So it's really become sort of this passive, I think, civic gem for the township. This is the plan view, sort of a zoomed in plan view of that. Here is the stage area. Here are the walking paths. There's a little stone outcropping here. Travis, if I'm doing a terrible job describing this, please jump in. One of the other things, thanks. One of the other things that's changed is we have this, originally in the plan, we had this road coming through as another access point. For a variety of reasons, we cannot do that. So we actually have this sort of pickup drop-off point here at that sort of main central square, which we think is also really important in an age of Uber and Lyft, and as a gathering area. So it really becomes sort of a gateway into this sort of civic area. And this is a view from that circle. Here's the Prickett house. Here is the barn. Here's some of the existing foliage and some of the new stuff with the Wegmans at scale in the back. Travis, I am going to turn it over to you now a little bit here. To sort of really go into the details of this. This area here sort of sits across the street from the Wegmans and is intended as, go ahead.
The importance of all these spaces that you're going to see throughout is flexibility. They can be used for different things at different times. Sometimes they'd be used for active recreation or some event space. Seth touched on this earlier, but the parking between the retail building, the existing barn, and the existing house could be closed down on a temporary basis for different events that might happen. And this space up here by the retail building and across from the Wegmans is intended to be sort of a gathering or a meeting space. It has outdoor seating, mostly passive, but it's also a movement space. Next slide, Seth. Now, Seth pointed this out a little bit earlier, but we believe at one time, many, many, many years ago, that this might have been the actual driveway leading up to the house. And this alley of trees exists today, and we're connecting it to the new pedestrian path with something a little more suggestive of entering into this open space with some fieldstone and so on. And I want to point out that this is all our ideas and our concepts, but we'll continue to work with the township to further evolve any of these spaces. But this is the main existing historical area right here. Next slide, please. So the area at the top of this, between the barn and the house, again, is designed to be a flexible space with different paving patterns, maybe different textured concretes. Again, these are details that we haven't really gotten into. We could be doing some pervious pavements through here. And this, you'll see the focal point of the stage up here. Next slide, Seth. Where, you know, we're envisioning sail canopies or something that can be changed out from time to time to freshen up the space over the years. But this is a very flexible space that could be used for holiday presentations. It could be used for acoustic musical shows or otherwise. Next. Now, all throughout this space, we like to separate what is historical in the barn and the house from what might be more current and more contemporary. We don't want to blur those lines. We want to celebrate the history of these buildings. And so we are looking at a bunch of different textures and finishes, including some of the seat walls around the site. Some may be more modern, some may be fieldstone built. It depends on their use and depends on their context. Next.
So this is the perspective view, looking back towards into the space from that area where we think that original driveway used to be. Showing that alley of existing trees, some of the retail uses on the left, the Prickett House in the middle. You can actually see the Wegmans in the distance, but that's sort of the quality of that open space. And actually, you can see in the upper right, the viewpoint from where this has been taken. Here's another one. This is sort of a meandering path that comes in from the larger. Actually, no, we didn't mention this. The larger pathway along Stony Hill, where we've actually pulled that walkway, that sidewalk inward from the edge of the road into the space. You can see that here. You can see that sort of curve over here. This is the look of the retail buildings themselves. Again, still a work in progress. I'm not sure that we actually had gotten into this level of detail with you before. This is what the Wegmans architecture is, based on their standard model. But we wanted to place it in context with the row of trees that are in the back, and we even in context. There's that big cell tower that sits behind it. So we wanted to make sure that we had that scaled properly. We've started to look at the signage. This is what we're thinking about the entranceway, the main entranceway off of Stony Hill, to have two sort of monument signs like this on each side. Also along Stony Hill, there'd be a signage that looks like this with the various uses. Again, using some of that stone that is evocative of the existing buildings. This would be a sign in the middle of the roundabout. That's at the center of the site, separating where the residential area is from the commercial area. And in regard to that residential area, we've just really started to think about this in more detail. This is an example of the kind of building types and landscape that we're looking at there. This is actually another project that the same developer has done. This is in New Britain. We're going to use signage as well, as this is the sign on the other side of that entry that says Madison at Prickett Preserve. Highly amenitized apartment community with a central clubhouse, interior amenities, exterior amenities. That's actually a really big deal. We have the clubhouse here. There'll be an outdoor pool area here, and other rec space. And this is what we're seeing in these contemporary luxury apartment communities in that clubhouse area. More fire pits, seating areas, grilling areas, and obviously the swimming pool. But the rest of the area is also going to have some outdoor amenities. Obviously, we have this trail that we now have added here. Maybe there's going to be that other connection here, which we think would be a big amenity. But there are other places in the plan where we can have some of these other sort of either active or passive uses. Things like a bocce court or little exercise stations. Every apartment community we do now have little dog parks. Dogs are everything, it seems. Just little seating areas. It'd be great if we had space for one of these pickleball courts, which I haven't actually played. I understand it's sort of like kind of a mini tennis court type of thing. And obviously the walking paths, right? The walking paths are everything. We think the ability to walk to the commercial center from these residential units is just something that's relatively unique in the area. In terms of the residential architecture, we're picking up on the same color tones, the same idea of the farmhouse in the buildings themselves, looking at some vertical siding, using the stone, sort of kind of a farmhouse chic sort of look is how I would call it. So, that's where the plan is today. And, we're happy to answer any questions or comments. Just wanted to give you that sort of brief overview. And as Travis mentioned, the one thing I wanted to say is what we're showing from the landscape is in a collaborative effort between Travis and his team at Bowler and my team at Barton Partners. And we've done it without a ton of input from the township, and we're really looking for that feedback. We've been working on this for quite a while. We think we're pretty familiar with the area and what the possibilities are, but the feedback would be really something that we would welcome at this point. So with that, I'm actually going to leave the plan up and I turn it back over.
I said we'd have a brief presentation to bring you up to date. I put everybody, told them to wear their track shoes. That's our presentation, but we're here and we're certainly prepared to answer any questions that you have. We fully expect that now that we have submitted a revised plan to address the comments that we received from your consultants and the township committees, that our next meeting will be a meeting to discuss the engineering, the details of the plan. But we're looking just to give you an overview, to just tell you where we've been, and I suspect there will be several more weeks before we get the feedback that we need, and then we'll have a meeting where we can discuss all of this in gruesome, boring detail. So with that said, I know you've got a busy agenda. We're prepared to answer any questions that any of the board members have, and as soon as that's over, we'll let you get back to your meeting.
Well, I thank you all. I thank you for wearing your track shoes. And, to my mindset, I thank you most for being willing to come tonight for this informal presentation in our efforts to keep people up to date. I think it was 2019, so 19, 20, 21. We've been talking about this for a while. Certainly, the plans have changed, and I appreciate you updating us. I love that there's an effort to save more of the existing trees, the old growth trees. And, just to show my accent, more is better. So if you can do even more, that would be appreciated. One of you slipped a little bit. You said, I think you slipped anyway. Impervious, impervious. What's the difference? I would love it if we could, maybe when it's, the final round, there's an opportunity to have pervious or maybe reduced parking acknowledging that that there are allotments for parking that are appropriate, but maybe, we could, to quote my EAC friends, maybe we could fold that in as the process develops. Maybe we don't have to put all the parking down. We could see what's really needed and then get to that full number. So that's all I'm going to say for tonight. If any of the other supervisors would like to make a comment, please let me know. Go ahead, James. You are off mute first.
Can you hear me?
I can now.
Okay. Can you go back to that slide, Seth, with the stage? I don't know if you or Travis have control of it.
Second. Page 2. That one?
No, it was the one before that. It was earlier in the presentation. I think it had some like seating blocks that were curved around the back and the front of the stage. Yeah,
that one?
You can kind of see it from there. Is this going to be a rotating stage?
There you go. That's it, right, James?
Yep. Yeah, Seth, is this going to be a rotating stage?
I don't think we thought of it as a rotating stage. No.
So, I mean, and again, this just could be getting too deep into it, but the function of the stage typically is to have whoever is on the stage in one position and whoever's in the audience in another position, unless you're going to have a rotating stage. Those seats in the back wouldn't make sense, or those seats in the front wouldn't make sense, right?
Well, I actually think there's a pretty traditional sort of aspect of a central pavilion in the middle of a park that is.
Mr. McCartney, I mentioned that this was a stage, but in my statements, I had also mentioned that we're looking for flexibility.
Okay.
And a lot of times this could be used as a stage, but there's other times that this could just be used for different events or as a focal point. The advantage of doing a sail canopy like this is that maybe during the holiday season, maybe that can come down and that can be the central focal point of other presentations or sculpture or like temporary sculptures or things like that. I'm thinking of stuff like what Peddler's Village does in their spaces. And, it's flexible in this way.
Okay.
Yeah, you actually caught me off guard there. I hadn't even considered it, that would even be a possibility. It's interesting.
Yeah, it's just a thought. Again, I understand this is all preliminary stuff and nothing's set in stone. It's just kind of a thought to say, the idea of a stage, I think earlier on, maybe in the process, some talk about there being some type of pavilion stage or some type of outdoor entertainment space. And again, I guess having that in the back of my mind and then looking at this rendering, it didn't really make sense. But to Travis's point, not specifically calling this a stage, but more of a focal point is a little bit, easier to understand that concept. That's all I had. Thanks, Suzanne.
Thank you, James. John, I saw that you had unmuted. Do you want to say something? Or should I just
Sure, if others want to go before me, that's fine, or I can go now if you'd like. Okay. Questions about the sort of community area. Is it the intent of the property owners to do programming for that or in the community space, or how is that anticipated to be an ongoing operation?
So, Mr. Lewis, our intent is, we would run some things as the owner of the commercial area, but also offer that area for township events. So I think we talked about that very early on in the process, and it would be available for the community, compatible with our events and or community events. So it's not a single purpose.
And then, along the question we've talked about previously, what's the sequence of buildings? You've said in the past that you wouldn't build the additional retail until you had tenants for it. Do you have tenants at this time for all of the additional 50,000 square feet of retail?
We do not. We have a tremendous amount of interest and activity. We are projecting a 2023 opening of the retail area. So again, as we move through the approval process and the permitting process, we'll start to actively engage the interest we have from various tenants. We do have obviously the board knows we have the Wegmans lease signed and committed. We have signed and committed a 3,500 square foot lease for the bank that you see. And we are probably weeks away from signing the lease for the pharmacy that you see. We are working with a existing restaurateur to take the barn. The concept now they're talking about is an Italian steakhouse. We feel fairly confident that that lease will mature. Hopefully when we come back next time, we'll have some renderings of how the barn will be renovated. We'll work with our, to make sure that we have their approval and their input into that. We are working with actually 2 different coffee shops to occupy the existing historic Cricket House. We have a breakfast, a national entity for a breakfast lunch place that we're working with. But to be clear, so I don't mislead you, the restaurant, the coffee shop, the breakfast place, those leases are not signed. They're all in negotiation.
Okay. But it's likely that you would be building all of those properties at once then, right?
The activity we're seeing sitting here today, we would construct all the buildings, continuously. We wouldn't stop and start.
Okay. And then in terms of, and just for the record, I don't claim to be an architectural critic. I'm no Paul Goldberger, the guy from the Times, but the facades for the multifamily housing is so reminiscent. It's exactly the same as other multifamily properties in the area, right? And it looks significantly different than the design for the other retail elements. And I'm wondering if there's a way that we could have something that was distinctive visually with a multifamily housing. I know you haven't rendered a final version, but I would like something that looks visually different than stuff that you would see just down the road, if that's possible, to break things up and perhaps make it look like the rest of the facility. Is that something you think, or am I off?
No. I actually think that's something we're actually striving to do, and I actually really do appreciate that feedback. Right now, we're pretty much only doing it with color, but I don't think we've successfully done it with mass. And maybe it's about. Actually, I'm going to forward a few slides. The retail buildings, like these are what the sort of the non-branded retail buildings, right? The non-branded, right? So, they actually have relatively steep slopes on those gable ends, and maybe that's something that we need to think about when we get to this stuff, right? Maybe they're too shallow. We're all we're doing right now is thinking about color, but we really haven't gotten into the specific design of these buildings. Certainly not as far along as we are on the retail.
I mean, there's a lot more that you could do here, I think, visually to make it unique and distinctive. And again, it's not necessarily a cost element. It's something that architecturally, it's important for communities to have variety visually. And this is so much similar to what structurally is what I've seen just down the street,
Sure.
And if you, take the time to think about it a little differently, come up with something that is strikingly different and perhaps in concert with the remaining retail buildings, yet different from the historic part and different from Wegmans, you could have something that could be really a win visually and distinctive in the community, and perhaps, command higher rents as well, just because of the uniqueness of it as well. I want to talk, my understanding here is you plan to go for preliminary and final approval probably, a month from now, 6 weeks from now? Is that your rough timeline?
So we as Mr. Harris has said, we've resubmitted plans after the initial review letters from your consultants. that they went in last Friday. Our expectation is, when those review letters come back, we'll be back in front of the board again. Probably will take it will take at least 2 meetings, I'm sure, to go through all the reviews and public comment. So just guesstimating right now, be late April, early May.
Okay. Want to touch base on some of the elements the Planning Commission talked about. You had specifically requested an exemption from the tree replacement fee. Exactly how much of an exemption were you looking for dollar-wise?
So
I don't know that, because, we've asked them here to give an informal presentation. I don't know that they're prepared for those types of discussions.
But it was well covered in the Planning Commission meeting, and it is something that they asked for an exemption. The Planning Commission said no.
Mr. Lewis, so we have requested and asked for a waiver for the tree replacement. However, we listened to the Planning Commission, and tonight we're not prepared to say we still want the waiver. We will come back to you at a future meeting. There were some suggestions made about trade-offs, planting trees in other locations and things like that. So we listened, we're taking all that under consideration, and we'll be back when we're here with a more formal request to tell you what we need or what we would ask for. But at this point, we're not prepared to say we will exercise that request for a waiver.
Okay. In terms of feedback, you can guess where I'm at on that, in that I would have the same reservations that the Planning Commission would have if you were to ask for any waiver on the tree replacement fee. And so I just want that well understood, that that's a real non-starter for me in terms of, trying to escape, reasonable, straightforward, fees associated with, maintaining our environment and our community. And that's just one area that I will have significant concern over, because my understanding is the amount was so high that it would make you the #1 recipient in corporate welfare should you have been successful. So in Lower Makefield history, beating out Aaron Development. So I don't want that to happen. So that's just a personal opinion. One last question is, you spoke with the Planning Commission at length and repeatedly. I've gotten this from the Citizens Traffic Committee. I just want you've pledged to make sure that you're going to make all the traffic improvements that have been requested. And I understand that you've been so far upfront enough to even seek a deed restriction of some sort on the property that requires that, or?
There's a unilateral declaration that's been filed that requires that.
Yeah, so I think that's excellent, and I welcome that would provide significant improvement, I believe, in Monday through Friday traffic over what we have now. My concern is that I also understand that you've begun to lobby Harrisburg for a multimodal grant on that. And it's my concern that I would prefer that the township not lose its opportunity to get other multimodal grants to address traffic issues within Lower Makefield. And I would oppose such a request if you were to ask for one, because again, you've already committed to making the traffic improvements. I'd have a hard time asking a nurse in Altoona caring for a COVID patients to subsidize your development. So I would really strongly ask that you not ask the board for that when you come back. And that would be the conclusion of my questions and comments. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Fred, sorry, Dan. Fred had raised his hand.
Yeah, I just have one question. On the north side, has there been any progress in your talks with the corporate center folks to get vehicular access between the parking lots?
We've not had any additional conversations with them, Mr. Weiss. We've reviewed I believe the benefits for both their park residents and our community. They are taking it under consideration. their last response was they wanted to see how their new parking lot layouts worked with the return of office occupants after the COVID experience. So we're continuing the discussions with them. They've expressed their willingness to be cooperative and consider that, but I don't have anything further to offer you about a definite commitment.
You think you could try by the time you come before the board with a request for an approval that we have some kind of answer?
Supervisor?
We will definitely try. And if possible, if they are willing, the owners of the park or their representative is willing to meet with us and maybe township staff, we can have a discussion with them, with staff before we come back.
Great, thank you. That's all I have.
Yes, Dan. Fred, you're done, right?
Sure.
Okay, go ahead, Dan.
All right, thanks, Suzanne. Well, thank you to your team to come in before the board tonight. I think I saw the whole presentation. This is one of those, the good, the bad, and the ugly of technology. My computer did an auto restart on me, the one that I do these Zoom meetings on, but I pulled up my other computer to watch the presentation as it rebooted with all the updates. I could watch the presentation on Facebook, so I think I got everything, but I may ask a question or two that's already been answered, so I apologize. First of all, the concept still appears to me to be the general concept, right, of a live, work, play, pedestrian access type of development with mixed use. So I'm happy to see that. Some of the features appear to have changed a little bit along the way, as you'd expect. So I guess my first question is probably to our staff, but Mr. Harris, you might know this off the top of your head. I kind of assume you do. You mentioned that you had just recently submitted some updated plans in the last week or so to the township, and we haven't had full, professional review, let's say. Are those changes such that you'll have to go back in front of the Planning Commission before coming before the Board of Supervisors, or
No.
are you still able to come before us?
Yeah, the recommendation of the Planning Commission was approval provided that we comply with the various consultants' recommendations. So we have revised the plans in accordance with the consultants and the Township Committee's recommendations. So we're in compliance with what the Planning Commission has recommended, and it would not be required to go back to the Planning Commission.
Okay, thank you for that clarification on process, because I'm sure we'll get more questions about that. So that helps with that helps me understand your time frame a little bit better too. So that's helpful. Honestly, my fellow supervisors asked some very good questions. Supervisor Blundy made a good point about trying to, wherever possible, minimize pavement or impervious surfaces, I should say, because there are different types of impervious surfaces. I would concur with that wherever possible. I think in the concept we may have had parallel parking in that community space, whereas now we have angled parking and no curb. I'm a little bit concerned about that from a stormwater management perspective. With all that, there's a large swath of impervious surface that's directly connected that, from a stormwater point of view, that's a little bit concerning. So I want to take a look at that if you could. In the public space, I know at the Planning Commission, I didn't hear this mentioned, but I'm curious if this has been changed too. In the public space, it was mentioned during the Planning Commission meeting that there was going to be a section, and I think this is probably a good plan that you have up on the screen for that. There was some discussion about putting in AstroTurf and some other features in there. That I had some concerns when I heard some of those things put in there. So I'm curious as to, is that still in the cards, or have you removed the AstroTurf and gone with a different approach? Could you clarify that one?
That's something we had contemplated, but again, this is a never evolving thing. We'll work with the township. We'll take comments It's note that AstroTurf is installed on concrete. We were talking about a synthetic turf, which would be pervious.
Okay. So, but I've worked with that stuff. I'm not a huge fan of it, but I understand that you're still looking and you're fine tuning and you're molding and creating and trying to make this a nice community space. So I'm not gonna get on your case for that. I know what you're trying to do. One of the features that a lot of people seem to like early on that I didn't see in here anymore, and I'm wondering why it was removed, and if it wasn't removed, but it just wasn't discussed, that would be interesting, was the I'll call it the water feature. That's this sort of the walk through, shallow water feature that kids might be able to walk through and have, not fountains, but water on a hot day or something like that. Has that been removed? So thank you, Suzanne. I was struggling for the term.
We haven't been contemplating the water feature in the current design. It has limited use. Again, we're trying to be as flexible as possible. Water feature would be 100% impervious, so that also limits us in that regard. But it also requires a lot of space and a lot of water. We can't use recycled water and those type of things. It would have to be chlorinated water for health reasons. And from a feasibility and environmental reason, we're not really considering that moving forward. Okay.
So generally speaking, so from a high level perspective, I think Supervisor McCartney, I think, was starting to touch on this a bit with the stage. And I know he's a musician and has a good eye for this stuff and good ear, I would say too. Just for the integrated community space that you're looking for. So just a lot of space to sit. A lot of shade. I think I said this at the Planning Commission meeting. One of the things that I've noticed in town is we have some really, really neat amenities in town, whether private or public. But because they're new, there's not always a lot of tree cover or other cover there because stuff hasn't grown in yet. So we struggle with providing shade in the summer, so they go underutilized sometimes. I can think of the at Memorial Park, the inclusive playground. Great playground. Struggle to use it because there's not a heck of a lot of shade. Luckily we just had a great Eagle Scout project where they're creating one of those, a feature that you've shown previously with one of the fans or whatever they're called.
Sails.
You are good at this, Suzanne. So stuff like that. And then in the actual green space in there, I would just say there's a lot of lawn and I would like to see more trees if possible, of different types, or even what folks might consider tall shrubs, or small trees that could create different layers of not only shade and tree cover, but it also creates microhabitats for multiple bugs and bunnies, as it were. But it does provide some pollinator habitat if you pick the right species, and it does provide some habitat in an otherwise fairly urban area. So any way we can provide those microhabitats, that would be appreciated. Let's see. I did hear something I did hear that I liked that came out of the Planning Commission. I think Mr. DeLuca, you had said in response to Mr. Lewis about the tree issue, is that you're looking at ideas. We have an ordinance that's recent for a reason, and it's very important to this board and to the township. But personally, I'm open to listening to other approaches, let's say, to mitigate the loss of trees, and not sometimes replacing of trees or using other methods besides just writing a check is more effective. Whether that's planting trees somewhere else, putting a nice wooded area that covers the need in conservation easement, something like that. Those are all interesting ideas to look at. So I'm happy to hear that you're looking at that. I'm also happy to hear what I think I missed a little bit when I was trying to get on the video, but I caught some of it. I'm happy to hear about the new pedestrian approach that you're using. That sounds like it's going to integrate things nicely. So I'm looking forward to seeing more about that. Let's see, anything else? The only other thing I'm thinking about right now, other than, Mr. Lewis had talked about the different architectural finishes and treatments to make things a little more unique and to maybe add a little something visually to it, which is good. From your layout perspective, when you look at your internal traffic analysis versus where pedestrians are going, do you see any conflicts? You have your you have your bank, and you have your pharmacy drive-through on one side and your bank drive-through on the other. So you're kind of bookending the retail area. Have you seen any conflicts with pedestrians coming in from any direction with those particular those features that you, and if so, have you addressed it? And if not, why not? Because I am curious about that.
You know what? I'll take that one. I actually think they're actually pretty conveniently located in that term, because I think the main pedestrian realm of the development is really in here. And so having a drive-through over here and a drive-through sort of located as far away from that as possible, I think is super helpful. And the other thing is that, we did something that's relatively land consumptive to really shield this drive-through from the pedestrian links from the residential community. So I actually think they're probably pretty ideally located. What would be a shame is if the pharmacy ended up being, over here, or, right, the bank ended up being over here. That I think there would be some serious conflict, but we work pretty hard to mitigate that.
Yeah, and that's how I see it too. So I'm glad you were thoughtful about that item. I'm trying to see. Let's see. And then from a process perspective, I'm also I can't remember if I mentioned this at the Planning Commission, but as the liaison to HARB, our Historic Architectural Review Board, they are, as you would imagine, if you haven't talked to them already, they are very interested in the treatments that how the existing barn, how the existing house will be used or reused at the site, and they are also similar to Mr. Lewis, or it's not really their purview per se, I don't think, but they're still interested in how the other buildings look in that because of proximity to and the whole approach that we're using. So I'm curious if you have plans to speak, to give any presentations to the HARB or get any input from that group sooner rather than later, let's say.
Yes. Well, the answer is, of course. One of the things we committed to was seeking HARB approval. There has been an enormous amount of work done with our historic architectural consultant and our archaeological consultant. We recognize that these buildings are eligible for placement on the National Register of Historic Places, and we're thoroughly committed. As a matter of fact, one of the elements of the unilateral declaration that we've recorded is just that, to make sure that we're sensitive to the adaptive reuse of both the house and the barn in a way that preserves their historical integrity. So that's something that we've committed to, and we'll work very closely with the HARB to make sure that happens.
They'll appreciate you saying that. I can assure you of that. I don't have anything else, Suzanne, but I did want to say thank you to the Prickett Preserve team for presenting today, and hopefully they heard everything that was said and can take that back and spin it around and have some good ideas.
Great. Then if there are no other comments from the supervisors, I think we should open it up to public comment. If there is any. Monica?
Yes, Lisa is on the line.
Oh, okay. Great. Thank you. Lisa, if you're there, please state your full name and your address.
Lisa, you need to hit *6 to unmute.
Lisa?
Hi. Yes.
Hi. Full name and address, please.
Yes. Lisa Tenney, 156 Pinnacle Circle. Yardley.
Go ahead, Lisa.
Okay, yes. So I appreciate everybody's efforts to make something. I just want to clarify a couple items. I'd like to ask the developer how much money is going to be funded by them for road safety features, as this is a great concern for all LMT residents. So if I could have that number, please.
$6.5 million.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and that does not include grant money or external funding? And please make it for the record.
That includes the money that the developers will be posting, plus the money that will be obtained from grants.
So some of that 6.5 million, let's make it clear, committing is not the same as paying. So you're not going to pay for 6.5 million. So let's make it clear the exact amount you're going to pay. Because you can't.
Well, the answer to that question
pretend some money is going to materialize.
The answer to your question is that I can't tell you that because we don't know. We've committed to 6.5 million. We don't know what amount of that will be obtainable by grants or other funding. And so whatever is not obtained that way will be funded by the developers. But that's all we can say on that at this point because it's it's too premature.
Okay, so that's pretty accurate. So if no grant money is funded, you've committed to $6.5 million.
That's correct.
Okay, and also, so I believe at one time there was an 8-foot pedestrian walkway across the I-95, the south path that you've said there's going to be a pathway, but at one time it was 8 foot, and now it's not going to change in width, but you're going to just put like probably some kind of cement thing if you get approval from PennDOT. Is this the path that will link it to Edgewood Village? Can you just explain maybe what this will look like for us?
Over to Chris Williams, who I thought pretty well explained that at the beginning, but we'll give it another try.
Yes. So the path over the path along the bridge over 295 is proposed as 8 feet. And that's consistent with prior presentations we've made before the township. So it is still an 8-foot path.
Okay, and are they gonna widen it? How does that work? And is it gonna? So is that 6.5 million?
Lisa, could you let them respond to one question and then if you have a follow-up?
Yeah. So yeah, I think the most substantial change that we discussed this evening with regard to the portion of the trail over the bridge is we've added a little bit more detail tonight as to the type of barrier that would exist between the path and the travel lanes, and we're proposing a more substantial single-faced barrier. To answer your question, there is sufficient width over the bridge. So what we're proposing is to reconfigure the lanes, reconfigure the cross-section of Stony Hill Road over the bridge, narrow the lanes so as to accommodate the 8-foot path. We have no means to physically widen the road. We have no means to physically widen the bridge, But what we're doing is we're reconfiguring the lanes to accommodate the bridge by narrowing the other lanes over the bridge. And that's unchanged. That's always been our proposal.
Okay, and I did forget to remind everybody that we try to limit public comment to about 3 minutes. So Lisa, do you have any other questions at this time?
So yes, I'd like Chris to walk over that, and I just don't see how that's going to happen.
Okay.
There is really no extra space.
So we will.
I'd like you to walk over a couple times.
Okay, thank you very much for your comments, Lisa.
So this is a problem.
Lisa, thank you. You've expressed yourself, and I look forward to hearing from you again on these issues. So thank you. Next public comment, please, Monica.
Larry is on the line.
Good evening, Larry. If you could state your full name and address for the record.
Larry, you need to hit *6 to unmute.
Good evening, Larry. Could you please state your full name and address for the record?
Sure, Larry Borda, 508 Heritage Oak Drive.
And Larry, if you could try to limit your comments to about 3 minutes, that would be great.
I'll do it as quickly as I can. The pedestrian walkway at 8 foot wide, is there a standard that applies to that? And does the 8 foot wide meet it?
Yes, 8 feet would satisfy that standard, especially coupled with the barrier that's being proposed between the path and the travel lanes.
Okay, and which standard is that?
It's a PennDOT standard.
Okay. It looks like with the revisions you're doing, you're going to have one entrance / exit for the whole complex. Am I seeing that right?
No, there's actually here. This would be the main entrance and exit that would be subject to a traffic light. We would have a right in, right out over here. And then I believe this is right in, right out, but no left in.
Okay.
So there are 3 vehicular entries.
Okay. I thought I saw a pool in some of the photographs. I don't remember that being part of the original project. Is that now going to be part of this project?
In general, the high-end multifamily communities, contemporary multifamily communities, almost always have a swimming pool associated with the clubhouse and amenities, and that's what we're showing.
Okay, but do we know if that's going to be? Are you proposing that to be here, or are you not?
We are.
Okay, I know you are. I didn't know if the developer was.
Yeah, this is Bob Dwyer. Yes, we are. We always have. It's always been on the plan.
Okay, I hadn't remembered that. Has Wegmans actually signed a lease for the site?
Yes, they have.
Okay. I think at one time you had agreed to produce that agreement. I don't think we've seen that yet.
I don't believe we've ever agreed to produce it.
Will you produce it?
I will not.
Why not?
It's private.
Larry, yeah, if we could try, this is not a question and answer debate situation. So if you have some comments on the presentation, please, we'd love to hear them.
Well, I didn't think it was a debate. I thought it was a pretty straightforward question. I'm not arguing with him. I just asked him, why wouldn't he produce it? You can always redact the financials, but that doesn't mean that the agreement itself is problematic, does it?
Larry, we'll take it all under advisement. If you could please continue along.
Do you have any, you're going to take it under advisement? What does that mean?
I don't know, Larry. I thought since you were sounding very loyally, I would try to sound very loyally too. We appreciate that you would like to see a copy of it. Do you have any other comments, please?
Well, is the township going to ask for a copy of it?
It's a business arrangement between Wegmans and the developers. It's a private arrangement. That's our position.
Right.
The lease terms really have nothing to do with the overall layout and the concept and the amenities and all of the elements of this land development plan, which should be of interest both to the municipality and its residents.
Well, I would think if I was the township, I would want to know the background of the agreement and how it drives what people are doing here. But I'll leave that up to the township while they take it under advisement. Last question is, do you have, I didn't see any photographs of what the site looks like from the street. Do you have any of those? I couldn't tell if you have signage or no signage.
Do you mean from Stony Hill Road?
Yes.
We do not have any specific, like, sort of ground level shots of the development from Stony Hill Road. This would be sort of hovering above. Let's see what else we have here. We don't. This is from the pathway along Stony Hill Road. Again, this would also be from the pathway from Stony Hill Road. And in terms of signage, this is a concept that we're exploring for the entry, the main entry, the one where the light is. This would be a monument sign a little bit further to the north along Stony Hill Road. This is a sign that sits in the middle of the roundabout from the main entry. And then this is the sign that would sit on the other side of the main entry from Stony Hill. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it's difficult because there's a time lag between what's on YouTube versus getting the live over the phone, so I can't really see what you're alluding to. But I just was curious. At one time, there had been discussion about trying to make the frontage analogous to what you might see at a Hilton Head or the Highlands down in Texas, and I didn't know if you were trying to accomplish that.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your comments, Larry. Have a good evening. Monica, is there any other public comment?
Yes, Nick is on the line.
Nick, if you could state your full name and record, state your full name and address, please, for the record.
Yeah, it's Nick Permola. I'm in Yardley Hunt, and thanks for having me, guys. First, for the record, you guys got to take some credit in having all of this information, which is now about a year and a half worth of information and backup files, very clearly and organized on your website here. I just want to give kudos to whoever the heck did that, because it's easy for me to follow along. I've attended most of the meetings, but I've missed a few, and I've been able to easily catch up. So I know that's not easy. So kudos there. So let me get into my my questions, and also congratulate the team here on an ambitious plan. I want to follow up on the last citizen who made the comment on the lease. I'm not so concerned really at all about the terms of the lease and whatnot. And it's actually great to hear that a lease has been signed. I think this is the first time I've heard this, statement in an official capacity. What I would think would be prudent, just following up on that, is that we do have some sort of direct confirmation to the board of supervisors at the township that, on the record that this has, it very well been signed, given that it is the anchor of this project. And, while it is being marketed as Prickett Preserve, it's really being marketed as the Wegmans and some other things that are nice to have. And so I think it's just prudent that anyone who has concerns about that, is just satiated with that confirmation. So that's more of a comment than a question. The question I have next is for the board again. At one of the original meetings, the developers had showed a very impressive village that they had used as a comparison. I believe it was one that they had developed. I don't know if it was the same principles, but to compare to. My question is, has anyone on the board actually spoken to that municipality's management and or township residents to just understand what expectations were set and where they were met, exceeded, or fell short? I think that's an important thing to kind of just get with respect to such a substantial investment, like this.
Yes, Craig.
So, I've gone, and I know another supervisor has gone to a residential comparison that they've used. They've referred to, and I've spoken to management there in terms of how I'm going to frame this in terms that managers talk in, how easy they were to deal with, how much did they follow up with what they said they had to do, how difficult were they as far as addressing staff's concerns. And this would be more specific to Mr. Dwyer because this was his project, residential that I toured. And I've got nothing but very flattering comments regarding Mr. Dwyer's approach and responsiveness in that residential area.
Yes, Fred.
As Curtis said, I've also visited Mr. Dwyer's New Britain development, looked at the amenities in the apartments, and it's good to see that the feedback I gave him is kind of incorporated into these new designs of the apartments. I think they're actually a step above New Britain. The residents in New Britain I spoke with were very happy with living there. I'm very familiar with Mr. DeLuca's work in the township and in Newtown. His quality is, from my layman's view, is very good. And what he's doing in Edgewood Village, finally finishing up thanks to the voters and allowing liquor sales. I think this is going, I'm sure this is going to be similar to his development in the village. The residents of the village are very happy with their homes, and I have no doubt the quality of this development will be the same, if not better.
Okay, that's helpful, and thank you. It was brought up, and I just hadn't seen any, and I haven't had a chance in public comment to ask about it, so I appreciate that, and a nice job just following through on that. Two more things, and I know I'm sort of at my limit here, so I appreciate it. I'll just leave you with it if that's okay. I know that an updated plan is going to be presented, or presented in a little bit now. So I would just say there, if there are any changes with respect to drive-throughs, one way or the other, increased or not, that any traffic study, impartial third party, be reflected in, any adjustments there be reflected in whatever those changes may be. And then lastly, I have a formal interest, management interest in the Lake Afton down in the borough, of which Buck Creek flows into. And I saw on the website that you guys did a drainage and water assessment. It looked extremely detailed, but honestly, I haven't had a chance to go through it. I would just ask on that behalf that if there is any impact to that from a drainage standpoint, that the environmental agency in our district here take a look at whatever that is on its downstream, pun intended, downstream impact to the lake, and obviously then flowing out through to the river. And I'm not sure if that is the case, but I would just ask that of this group. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Go ahead, Dan.
Real quick for Mr. Primola. Generally speaking, whenever one of these projects is done, the developer has to comply with both state and local stormwater management guidelines. From a very high level, that means that the post-construction stormwater has to be less volume, lower rate flowing off the site than the pre-construction, which means it would have, but in theory, would have less downstream impact than there is currently. And that's just from a flow and volume perspective. At the same time, they also have to address water quality so that there are, the similar concern with pre versus post, that the post condition, the water quality is at least as good as, if not better than, what we would call the pre-construction water quality. So they will have to go through the Pennsylvania DEP, I think vis-a-vis the Bucks County Conservation District has been delegated that authority, so they'll have to get approvals from them. And at the same time, our township engineer and other staff will be reviewing the stormwater management plan to make sure that it complies with all of our regulations, which tend to be a little stricter with our low impact development ordinances than even the state is. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah,
I know our group will be.
It does, and that's it's terrific to hear. It's very thorough. It's just the lake right now is at a very tentative or delicate situation where we've just taken years to get it back to what it ought to be with respect to mold and algae and so forth that's been blooming as a result of runoff and the chemicals and so forth. So the one thing that we were most concerned about is the construction phase and making sure that is tracked and monitored with some sort of baseline to compare, pre and post. So it sounds like the right folks are on it, and I just wanted to make that a formal sort of request on our behalf. So thank you.
Yeah, much appreciated.
Thank you. Monica, is there another caller?
Yes, Lee is on the line.
Excellent. Lee, if you could state your full name and your address for the record.
I've said it enough, Chair Blundy, but I'll do it for the record anyway. It's Lee Pedowitz, 247 Truman Way, over here in Yardley. Chair Blundy, supervisors, chief, Mr. Paco, and anybody I've forgotten, I just want to say hello. And I don't think I've had a chance to break in since the new year, so happy and healthy new year, and I hope you're all well. Just to support Lisa and Larry's comments regarding the overpass over 295. If you just have to drive it and not even walk it, because I think, as Lisa said, if you walk it, you're basically taking your life in your hands. I don't think that overpass was designed for other than vehicular traffic. And if you do put an 8-foot wide pedestrian walkway with a protective barrier, the vehicular traffic, it's going to be like if you're going over that Washington Crossing Bridge. If you don't pull your side view mirrors in, you're going to knock them off. So I think that's really got to, in all seriousness, that's something that's got to be looked at. And also, in this age of the pandemic, you're walking over a bridge. I don't know if you can maintain your social distancing, and hopefully we'll never have that again. So, I don't want to make light of this. I think it's something that has to be considered. The other thing is, when this was presented a while ago, I had made a comment about, are all the structures going to be built at one shot? And when I say at one shot, in one phase. And I referred to the construction going on at the Newton Square Mall, where all of a sudden they're building restaurants and all this other stuff. And if anybody's driven through there, that was a real mess. And the answer, and if I remember correctly, the answer that I was given was that there's not going to be any construction until commitments are made to stores or restaurants or to whatever will be given to anything that's going to go in there. When Supervisor Lewis brought it up, if assuming I heard it correctly, I believe it was mentioned that basically the structures are all going to be built and that's going to be it. So it seems like it's a 180-degree shift, and I was just wondering what the position is going to be. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Lee.
So you're correct that when we initially presented, probably almost 2 years ago, the question was asked and answered that we would build in phases as leases were executed. Sitting here today, out of our 155,000 square feet of space, 100,000 is occupied by Wegmans, 13,000 and some change by a pharmacy, 3,500 by a bank, over 5,000, as I spoke about, for the repurposed barn for a restaurant. The house, it already exists, but will be hopefully converted to what we propose as a coffee shop. So we're talking about four buildings left of approximately 30,000 square feet, doing math quickly. With what we have leased currently, our intention is to build all those buildings when we start the site and backfill with leases between now and 2023 when we anticipate the occupancy for the commercial area will begin. So yes, we're going to build them all at one time, and things change over a couple of years. And like I said, we've gotten a tremendous amount of interest, and we know between now and 2023 we'll have all those buildings occupied.
All right, thank you.
Good evening, Lee.
Good evening.
Monica, is there anyone else?
Yes, Robert is on the line.
Great. Robert, please state your full name and your address for the record.
Can you hear me?
Hear you now. Yes,
okay.
hello.
Robert Abrams, 652 Teach Drive. When this project was originally proposed, what we're getting now appears to be, and it's listed on the agenda as informal presentation update. Update seems to be telling us this is what we're going to change, and we really don't care whether you like it or you don't. That's not the way this project was accepted. I believe Mr. Borda asked if we were going to be able to see a copy of the lease or the agreement or something that puts the anchor store Wegmans on this project that appears to be its only selling point. In fact, I don't even consider it a selling point personally. But in looking at Wegmans' website, their future store locations are telling me Chapel Hill, North Carolina. I'm reading off my cell phone here. Wake Forest, North Carolina. Future sites, Delaware, Greenville, Maryland, Rockville, North Carolina, Cary, Holly Springs, North Carolina, Virginia, Alexandria, and Reston, Washington, D.C., Wisconsin Avenue. Did I miss something here? Because I didn't hear myself say Lower Makefield Township or Yardley or anything about Pennsylvania for future stores. It would only be in their best interest to put it on their website that they already have an agreement to put a store in Lower Makefield Township or Yardley, Pennsylvania, if there was an agreement. Now, I would also like to see an agreement, but more importantly, I think at this point, because we can't get the documentation, maybe this needs to be put up in November as a referendum and see if we really want this thing, if there's no Wegmans or there's no anchor store.
Thank you very much, Robert. Have a good evening.
Okay. Yeah, hold one more thing, because I got 43 seconds here.
Okay.
It appears that if you rub everybody's belly and tell them how wonderful you are, Nick can speak for twice as long as somebody who disagrees with what's going on. And I still have 30 seconds, 28, but I'll let it go. But I want an answer as to whether we're going to see some sort of an agreement with Wegmans or not, and what the board is going to do about it.
Robert, I suppose I owe you an apology. I thought you were done because you had stopped talking. And so I was wishing you a good evening. But if you weren't done, by all means, please use all your time. And I think you have. So now I hope you have a good evening and thank you for calling. Gentlemen, I think you were trying to respond to his question as he was talking. So if you have something you wanted to say.
This is Vince Luke again. I want to be unequivocal. We have a signed lease with Wegmans. When Wegmans decides to put a future store coming on their website is up to Wegmans. We have a signed lease. We've had a signed lease. Wegmans will be on this property if we are fortunate to get the board's approval at a future date and we start construction. So all the back and forth about we don't have it, we have it. And yeah, I really take a little bit of offense to some of the residents calling in, questioning, our integrity and what we're stating. So I just want to make that point very, very clear.
Monica, are there any more public comments?
Yes, Lisa is on the line.
Did you say Lisa?
Hi, this is Lisa Huckler. How is everyone? Chair of the Disability Advisory Board.
I know our board will have a chance to review the detailed plans, and we'll make comments later. But prior to you finalizing some of your designs, I just wanted to share our new priority statement that we came up with last year in our committee. So if I can just read that to everyone, if you wouldn't mind.
No, not at all, but could you just state your address before you do that, Lisa?
Oh, sure. I live at 524 Palmer Farm Drive.
Thank you.
The Lower Makefield Township Disability Advisory Board's mission is to educate and advise the township and broader community about issues affecting people with disabilities, promoting inclusion, safety, and equal access for everyone. Consistent with that mission, the Disability Advisory Board has created a new priority for itself, partnering with the township officials and builders to ensure that new construction within the township is as inclusive of people with disabilities as possible. As part of this partnership, we ask that the township work with the Disability Advisory Board to create additional building recommendations that exceed the accessibility requirements of the Americans with Disabilities Act. The Disability Advisory Board believes that the entire community would benefit from these new recommendations. The recommendations would include things such as family restrooms in commercial buildings so that people with disabilities can enter a restroom with a caretaker from another gender, additional apartments with wheelchair-accessible floor plans, and the elimination of curbs when possible. Fortunately, most of these recommendations can be implemented relatively easily if they are incorporated into building plans before construction begins. We look forward to dialoguing with you so that this new focus can improve our township by promoting inclusion, safety, and equal access for everyone. So I just wanted to read that. I know like I said, I know we'll get the plans and, we can make any comments, but we just want you to, in this preliminary phase of your planning, just know that, we have an aging population here. We have a lot of nursing homes and over 55 communities. We have, if you look out at statistics, there's probably 7% of people under the age of 65 that are people with disabilities. So we just want you to just keep that in mind. So when you're creating pavilions or little areas that people can get to, make sure they are accessible for anyone, whether you're in a wheelchair or you have limited, walking capacity. Maybe I know you have walking paths. I saw some of the design with some field stone, but there's grass in between. So I don't know if the 9/11 Garden of Reflection, they have that pervious surface, the new pour that they just did, the pathway. So maybe something like that, that's more easily for wheelchairs and such. But also, keep in mind, we'll be looking at the parking and just to keep in mind apartments, maybe on the lower level while you're in the preliminary phases, make sure there's wide enough doors and maybe walk-in showers. So we're just looking to inform you of things that we might be looking at and hope that you can incorporate some of these into your building design. And we really look forward to working with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Next caller, Monica.
Next caller is Christina.
Good evening, Christina. Can you please state your full name and your address?
Christina, you need to hit *6 to unmute.
Okay, sorry about that.
Hi, Christina. Would you please state your full name and your address?
Yes, it's Christine Martin, 8 Fayette Drive in Yardley, Lower Makefield Township, Pennsylvania. And I'm calling because I am concerned about, like others have said earlier in the meeting, the pervious versus the impervious surface. And I was wondering if there are any percentages about the property, in relation to the property size, how much of this property is going to be pervious and how much is going to be impervious? Because it looks like it's going to be a lot of asphalt, and I'm very concerned about the ratio here of the impervious versus the pervious. Does anybody have any numbers, concrete numbers of what the ratio is or the percentages are?
The site is 65% impervious and 35% pervious.
Okay, and is that what is allowed?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Christine. Have a good night. Next caller, Monica?
Next caller is Vanessa.
Good evening, Vanessa. Would you please state your full name and address?
Hi, I'm Vanessa Fiore at 1995 Woodside Road. And I do want to appreciate you presenting this information to us. John Lewis, I appreciate your comments about trying to integrate the whole look of the commercial spaces with the apartment complexes. I thought that was really a nice idea. And I was wondering if the developers had thought of putting the walking path, instead of having it cross Stony Hill Road, which is going to be really dangerous, if they had thought of maybe having it curve underneath the bridge of the 95 there. I mean, if you can sort of wall it off, it could be quite safe, and make it go underneath that bridge and then curve back around to the south side of Stony Hill Road. It's just a thought, to instead of making it cross the road, to make it sort of curve around that way. So that's just a thought. And then I was also wondering, are these apartments condos or rentals?
They're rentals.
This is Bob Dwyer. They're rentals.
They're all going to be rentals? Okay.
Yes.
Is there any possibility of making them condos? I prefer the idea of having people who have invested, make an investment in the community as opposed to transients.
No, these are going to be rentals, no condominiums.
Okay. Is there any possibility of switching them over to condos later on?
No. Well, of course there is. Yeah, you can always convert to condos at a later date. But just being perfectly frank with you right now, they're set up for a multifamily rental, and that's the likely outcome. But of course, it could be converted at a later date.
Okay. Let's hope we'll aim for that. Also, I do find 9 apartment buildings to be excessive. Those 2 in the end there look really stuffed. And I was hoping that, the Board of Supervisors could consider reducing the number of apartment buildings down to 7 instead of 9. It would just alleviate the congestion, I think, that much more. To me, it's a lovely thought. I think you guys have thought it through very carefully. I do find that there's a little bit of stuffing going on in there, and certainly that. And so if we can just alleviate it, because the congestion will be rather excessive in that area. But other than that, it looks, a nice use of that space. So those are my comments. And also, I was just wondering about parking lot. The IKEA in Conshohocken has the parking underneath the building. I don't know how much cost that adds to it, but that's sort of a thought of alleviating all that parking space above ground. And also, I don't think that's enough parking space, knowing the Wegmans I've been to. Just a thought to create an underground parking underneath the building. Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa. Have a nice evening.
You too. Good night.
Good night. Next caller, Monica?
There are no further comments.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you, everyone, for your time this evening. I know that we'll be seeing you again at some point in the future, and I look forward to our further discussions.
Well, thank you very much. We all appreciate the opportunity to bring you up to date. And the next time we see you, we'll, I suppose, be talking in a much more detailed fashion about the various reviews that we've received. But we appreciate the time that you've given us tonight, and let's all stay safe in the storm tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you. Good night.
Great evening, everybody.
Everybody.
Thank you.
All right. Well, moving right along to agenda item number 11 with 22 to go. We are with the engineer's report. So, Andy.
Yes. Hi, Supervisors. You have in your packet my report. I just want to kind of highlight one thing. We were working with construction sites around the township today, just due to the recent storm and the snow melt. It's done a real number on erosion and sediment control measures at various construction sites throughout the township. We've reached out to the site project foreman and stressed to them that the focus needs to be site cleanup and street sweeping and reinforcing those erosion and sediment control measures today. And with the storm coming up, that's going to be a focus of our inspections after this future storm. So I just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention. Then moving on, tonight the agenda item is to consider the 2021 road program. We had bid this project on Penn Bid. Bids were opened on February 11th. That was last Thursday. We received 7 bidders. There were 2 low bidders that were very close to each other. And so if you'll remember, we bid this out as a base bid, and then we had 3 alternate bids. Bid alternate number 1 was Stylo Road from Harvest Drive to Culdepacker. Alternate bid number 2 was Inverness Drive, and alternate bid number 3 was James Court. So if the board just awarded the base bid, Earl Asphalt Company would be the low bidder. If they awarded the base bid, alternate bid 2, and alternate bid 3, it would still be Earl Asphalt. However, if they awarded base bid and alternate 1 or any combination that included alternate 1, Harris Blacktopping would be the apparent low bidder. In reviewing the bids, the prices that we've received for wearing course, for asphalt milling, were very good from comparing it from what we've had in previous years. Last year's numbers were very good. This year's numbers are right in line with that as far as a unit price for asphalt and a unit price for milling. I believe that the number that we got for milling is even less this year than it was last year. So these are good prices that we're getting for this type of work. I believe the budget, and Kurt can correct me if I'm wrong, was $650,000 for this work. If the base bid and all 3 alternates were awarded, it would be $642,892.85. So within budget. So we've prepared a recommendation to award for the base bid and the 3 alternates.
So moved. Okay, John, before you make that motion, I know we had talked last week or last meeting about if we were to move forward to consider putting into the motion a acknowledgement that the responsible contractor ordinance time would be shortened so that we would be able to award these on March 3rd. So
I believe that was for the public part of the review process, that reduced it from 21 to 14 days. I believe is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Right. Okay.
So does that have to be part of this motion, Dave, that for this?
I would say since you're going to be awarding the bid, that you would, because it'd be part of the whole process. I think it probably would be wise to do that. Yes.
Okay. So with that, do we have a motion?
So I move that we award the contract to Harris Blacktopping for the base bid and all the bid alternates requested, and that the public review of the bidder's suitability under our responsible bidder ordinance be limited to 14 days in this bid.
Is there a second? Thank you, Fred. Okay,
So-
with that,
So while we're discussing that, I do have one item that I want to bring out just for transparency's sake. Harris Blacktopping, they were the low bidder. They provided, we bid this project out on Penn Bid. So they, along with the rest of the bidders, provided a bid bond, an electronic copy of that bid bond on Penn Bid. We've downloaded that PDF. We have a copy of it. They submit the hard copies to our offices. That has not happened yet because it got lost in the mail from the bonding company to them. They have now ordered a new copy, a hard copy, to be sent to us via FedEx so that it can be tracked. So they believe that it'll arrive here shortly, but we do not have it in hand.
And I would say that Mr. Polk and I discussed this earlier today. Because all of the bidders went through Penn Bid and all had the same, there's no competitive advantage or disadvantage since they all submitted the electronic bids, and certainly Harris did as well, that the only amendment to the motion, I hate to do this again, would be subject to receipt of a satisfactory hard copy of the appropriate bid bond. That'd be appropriate, Andy?
Yes.
Okay.
And I do want to point out for the, I do want to point out for the board, they do have that on FedEx tracking. They just put that in the regular mail. And like many of us that have been having trouble getting things, they sort of communicated that with Andy early on. We put it in the mail and Andy's been tracking them to his credit. So today that they're going to resend that back out. We would expect to have that in a couple of days. But we do have the copy of that they submitted, which is essentially satisfactory, at least in our opinion, at this time. It's not like they didn't post it or where we weren't waiting. It's just a hard copy of it didn't get lost in the mail, I believe.
Yeah, I don't think anything is invalidated because we don't have the hard copy.
John, do you accept that amendment?
Well, hold on a sec. You guys got to give me the stuff before I make the amendment, before I make the motion. So I will amend my motion to say that the bidder be in compliance with all bidding requirements, including accepting FedEx submission in lieu of lost mail. And we'll just consider that like I consider all the Christmas gifts that have come in February. A nice, pleasant reminder of where mail is right now. So, yeah, I will accept that amendment.
And Fred?
And before I accept the amendment, I will say, oh, the joy. And then I will accept the amendment.
Okay, so is there any discussion? Yes, Dan.
So, Andy, on the just to make sure, the electronic document that you pulled, is that up to date or is that an old version that they had on hand? I just want to make sure. I know that happens sometimes.
It's current. It was dated February 11th, I believe.
Perfect. And then because the two lower bids, they're very similar when you go through the line items, right? Couple questions on that. One, two primary questions when you see bids that close are the history of the quality of the work that they've done. Do you have any comments on the comparing and contrasting the two of them? If you have any history with them?
I think that they both do quality work. In fact, Harris Blacktopping did the road program in Lansdale, of which in 2020, of which we are township engineer in Lansdale. And I spoke with the engineer and the inspector on that project, and they said that the quality of the work was exceptional. So
good. that's part one, and then part two, I guess, is when they're that close. Obviously these are line item bids. Did they have any exclusions or assumptions or anything else within their bids that might make one look like it might be more prone to, let's say, a change order, where something might be, were the terms and conditions similar, such that one doesn't come with heftier risk than another one when you review it?
Yeah. So in my analysis of the structuring of the line items and the bids, I didn't see anything that would jump out that would set us up for paying more down, during construction.
Okay. It's just they're very close across the board. Okay. And then I don't do this, but I want to give a shout out to the whole board for looking at these different bid alternates. We came in well under budget with these bids, and we're able to fit in 3 really good alternates. John, thank you for calling it out back in December. And then, I think when we went through the list there at the last, whatever meeting that was, I think it was a very thoughtful process, and we had our fingers and toes crossed. And in this case, we got pretty lucky. So this is nice to hear. So hopefully our neighbors on these 3 roads can breathe a sigh of relief that they get their roads done a little bit sooner than they expected. So nice job to the board on that.
Yeah, and we'll have so many pats on the back, really, for the staff and getting these out so early. I think being first to market is helping us and allowing us to take advantage of that. So kudos all around, fingers and toes. So anyone else have any comments? Monica, is there any public comment?
No public comment.
Okay. Well, then that.
One last, just for those interested, Harris Blacktopping did our 2017 road repaving program. So they have previously done programs in the township. Just going back to check. It predates you, Andy, so on that one.
Okay, well, with that, can we call the question? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye and raising their hand.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0.
I have nothing further in my engineer's report, but I'm happy to take any questions if the board has it.
Then hop skipping along to agenda item number 12, project updates.
The only thing I will point out in there is, and I did not change the wording, but you all have before you, under the solicitor's report, a memorandum of understanding regarding the multi-use trail with PA Water, which will allow us to sort of finalize the paperwork necessary for PennDOT that can move forward. In regards to the Big Oak and Makefield Road signal work that's going to take place, there was a first Zoom meeting that took place today between our traffic engineer and Tom from the police department regarding going on site and dealing with, what I called to the crosswalk to nowhere that Joe wants to appeal to PennDOT to waive that regulation to save money before that goes out. So hopefully we'll have that wrapped up soon. But if there's any other questions, I can take them on the projects.
Go ahead, Dan.
Sure. Kurt, it's been a while since we've talked about this, so I need a little bit of a refresher because I get asked about this a bunch lately. I think some board members do as well. Kind of falls under item A, 12A, Township Properties Inventory. Last I recall, when we, there he is, when we, you and Mr. Majewski and other township staff went through and did a pretty thorough inventory of all the properties and tried to do a pretty thorough assessment of where they are at this point or at that point in time, whenever that was. And, you're trying to take next steps to basically, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but what I saw as setting the baseline for us to allow us to come up with plans to address various properties in various states in the township. Because of obviously our current state in the township, it's something we'd love to progress faster if wherever possible, and of course we can't always do that for economic reasons. But can you give us a very the Reader's Digest version of where, not necessarily what was done, because I think we know that, but where we stand with all that stuff?
So part of that's going to be we started work with staff in-house. We have reached out to Remington Vernick to assist in trying to come up with tentative numbers regarding repairs that would need to be done. Frankly, I started to have that discussion with Andy last year. We have to get back to that to talk about sort of the cost of service that would be from Remington Vernick, and keeping that in scope with, I don't want to call it a cursory review to suggest that's not going to have sort of meat on the bone with those numbers, but we'll have to get back to that to see the extent of that analysis and what that cost would be. I do know that there's been some discussions, obviously, on some properties in the township versus others for obvious reasons, whether it's Patterson Farm, whether it's the golf house, versus others that may have less visibility or significance to the community. So I think it's going to involve trying to finalize some of those preliminary numbers with Andy. And the good news is we have a couple of other PEs on staff as well that will work to do that. So that is something that we're going to have to pin up to wrap up, that we can get some preliminary info to the board to give some insights. I don't know that that's answered that. I've not tried to do that in a roundabout way. It's just the original discussion with Andy as far as the extent of what we would want, the cost of that. Andy and I need to revisit that with staff to see how we can accomplish that in a financially reasonable way.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very fair update. I mean, we haven't talked about it in a while, and it's basically what we've done and what the next steps look to be and how you're going to do it. So I think that's very fair. That's I didn't expect a lot of detail because we can't. But thank you.
Okay, well then we can move along to agenda item number 13, which is the manager's report.
Thank you. So the first item before you is a resolution, resolution number 2440. The purpose of that resolution is to basically allow me to submit the package that needs to go to PennDOT. So as a reminder of what this is, this is the submission we need to make PennDOT to remove the push button at Woodside that, remember, we had the discussion about it was sort of not in an appropriate place. Our traffic engineer came up with a way to retime the signals that actually would be a better option. We have to go through a process to PennDOT for submission, and I need to have a resolution passed that authorizes me to sign that application, which is the purpose of the resolution 2440.
So moved, if I can do that.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Fred, for your second. Is there a discussion? John, did you want to discuss?
That was an attempted second.
Okay. Any discussion? Monica, is there any public comment?
There is no public comment.
Great. Then with that, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye and raising your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
The motion passes 5-0.
Next item on the agenda is consideration for the appointment of a BCO, a building inspections company. We have gone through the process. Staff had made the recommendation to retain Barry Isett and Associates Incorporated as the building code official in coordination with the company. We have tentatively scheduled for them to begin on March 1st. Supervisor Grenier, I say this respectfully because I know this will be a question you're going to ask, so I'm anticipating your questions. As we know, we have a service agreement that we enter in with our providers, our engineer, our township solicitor. We have the tentative agreement submitted by ISET and Associates to us that we have reviewed and looked to apply those things applicable to a BCO consistent with the extra provisions that we have added. For example, with Remington Vernon, it would be the plan of staff if they are hired. We do have a start date of March 1st for them to provide over a copy of that proposed agreement before staff would sign it to make sure that the board is happy with what the final version of that looks like. So that is already underway. We've engaged the solicitor in that process, the planning director, and myself to incorporate those items that we will do in fairly short order if this consideration is approved this evening.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, James. Fred seconds. Is there any discussion? Yes, Dan, anticipated by Kurt.
Kurt, I always appreciate it when you consider my thoughts ahead of time. It's warm and fuzzy right there. From a, since this is, since we're hiring someone for the residents, it's when they hear hiring, that generally gets people to say, oh, they're spending more money on staff, and that sometimes it gets people to think and gets concerning sometimes. Kurt, can you address how this fits into the budget? This position or positions fit into the budget more generally, and what that means for the township. Can you explain that, please? Sure.
The township already has a building code official that is budgeted for the year. We would anticipate that the cost of this company that we think very highly of are higher than the current company that we have. The effect on the budget based upon their start time could be in about an additional $20,000 or so more than we have budgeted. But what I will point out is that, we put an RFP out for this service. We reached out specifically to 4 or 5 other companies, presumably that do this operation, that we know that do this operation, with a very robust set of standards for the type of person we want. You can have companies that do building inspection, but we had a very specific set of criteria on what their qualifications needed to be and what their available staff had to be. And this is really becoming so specialized, and there's so much training required that the field really is shrinking with the number of building inspectors, not just across Bucks County, but across Pennsylvania that we're seeing. So we really expect, I expect to see these prices rising everywhere because the supply is low. We were very happy with this firm. The person that's going to be assigned to the township has all of the credentials and qualifications to review and inspect. And we're going to have a real high focus on customer service and communicating with people. And if there's problems with inspections, that we are available, they are available to deal with these things. So overall, we're very happy with it. Financially, it's a little bit bigger of a ding than we had budgeted for, but not anything substantial that would have any marked change in the cost of that department for 2021.
Thank you.
Is there anything, other discussion? Monica, is there any public comment?
There is no public comment.
Then with that, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye and raising your hand.
Aye.
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 Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. I'd like to ask for consideration. It was in your packet for payment request number 1 for contract SWR 20-2 manhole rehabilitation in the amount of $30,780 to Advanced Rehabilitation Technology, LLC.
Is there a motion? Thank you, Fred.
Second.
Well, James said it. Dan, your peace sign fails. So, any discussion? Yes, Dan.
Andy, did you do the inspection on this, or not the inspection, but did you do any review on this one?
No, as this was sanitary sewer.
Okay. The only question was going to be, was it completed to everyone's satisfaction? I wasn't sure if you saw that or not.
I did not.
I think the answer to that is yes. However, there is still money. It's not closed out yet, Dan. There's still about $3,200 left that we'll follow up with them, for them to be able to get that final payment.
Okay.
Any additional discussion? Monica, any public comment?
There's no public comment.
Then with that, I call the question. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Raise your hand.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. And now, we talked about, at least I had mumbled through my little speech at the beginning of this year about my hope that we'd be able to pave more roads. And we, got very fortunate with the way the bid alternates worked, that we're seeing that already. But our manager has a proposal that may help us even further. And with that, Kurt.
So first, before we start, and if there's still anybody in the public watching, I'm not asking for any approval tonight. We're not looking to spend any money tonight. My goal is to have some of these things presented and discussed well in advance of our budget discussions this fall. So, Suzanne, thanks. I'll try to go as efficiently as I'm capable, which we know I'm challenged as working through this. But I want to go through this as efficiently as I can. If you want to ask questions when we're done, we can backtrack. But if we could have, Kirk, can you go ahead and bring this? Go to the next slide. All right, so I'm just going to go quickly because I want to give some context here. Over the years, even like we faced this year, we have essentially budgeted in three main areas, right? Liquid fuels, which is state money, but that we also pay for other things out of that liquid fuels fund, most notably rock salt, which we're all experiencing now. Grants, highly desirable, but unpredictable and not necessarily something we can predictably count on. Recently, we got a $300,000 grant through, I believe it was Representative Warren's office to help us pave. And every dollar we can get for that is terrific. General fund. We have done some paving through the general fund. And the only thing I'll point out, and the same thing that's challenging is when you do that, even if there's a commitment to doing it, it is competing with other priorities that can affect that on a year-to-year basis. Could we please go to the next slide? So, excuse me one second. Yep, thank you. So Lower Makefield Township does have 139 miles of locally owned roads. I mean, and this is not rocket science. Heavily traveled roads will need paved more frequently than those less traveled. And again, I'm not going to be able to give you specific science here, but understood amongst managers and even the way we coordinate with engineers is a blended average to say a road would be repaved every 20 years is a reliable number. Again, some roads might need repaved every 10 years or so, and others 3 times as long as that, but it's this general average. So if you took that general average, it would suggest then that Lower Makefield, to be hitting that benchmark, would need to be averaging 6.9 miles of road a year. So I just want to point this out, that sometimes those mileages can be misleading, right? You get real wide roads like Silo, as an example, become far more expensive to pave than narrower ones. So just miles or length can be a bit deceiving, but I think they're a good guideline. So I'm going to bring up this idea, what I'm going to call a 3-year blended average, 3-year blended average for roads that we will come back to. Next slide, please. So I want to talk about this because it's something I've done in other places and I've actually talked to other towns about doing, and it's proved to be highly effective. we have a debt service fund. There's always a lot of talk about with elected officials, and I appreciate it. But boy, we'd like to have a road millage. Can we do a road millage that people will know that this is what we're going to spend money on? I think every place I've been, nobody's crazy about taxes. However, most people would say, boy, if you would tell me you're going to take a tax dollar from me and it's going to go to roads, I'm in favor of that. The problem is, in a second-class township, there is no road millage. So how do we go about essentially creating something dedicated that people will understand that's what we're going to utilize it for? It's this debt service fund. So that debt service fund goes to make bond payments that we used primarily for open space over the years. That debt service fund, you're going to see in that second bullet, is going to go down in 2022. And that payment will continue on for another 14 or 15 years after that. So that $868,000 reduction is roughly 1.6 mils. That millage that is going to be reduced can be applied for roads, right? So, and we'll talk about how we can use this loan. We can use a short-term loan, much the same way that we finance equipment. We do equipment purchases. There tend to be 36 months. Great interest rates, we turn them around and we can continue to buy more equipment than we would otherwise by purchasing it outright. And as a reminder to the public and to the board, every 1 mil generates about $538,000. Next slide, please. So this is how this would work. And if we were to look at next year, the township would take out about a $1.5 million short-term loan, 3 years. We would apply that money to 2022 to pave an additional $1.5 million. With the reminder that we still have the state money, the liquid fuels money of about $800,000, which would mean our 2022 road program would be $2.3 million. So that loan, the $1.5 million, would be paid off with that 1 mil, which generates the $538,000 with quarterly payments running through the first quarter of 2025. In those intervening years of 2023 and 2024, we could continue to use our liquid fuels allocation, and other funds, possibly from the general fund, to boost the amount of roads that we would be paving. That loan is paid off in the first quarter of 2025. Then we go back in 2025 and do another $1.5 million where that mill is applied to the payment. Can we go to the next slide, please? So to just show this, to illustrate this, you can see then over a 7-year period, right, we have essentially loans being in year 1, which is 2022, year 4, which is 2025, and year 7, which is 2028. So if we take both of those totals, then that amounts to a total paving of $10.1 million. And we'd be doing that significant increase without asking taxpayers to pay anything extra. Now, it's understood, and I'm saying here in the end, that we don't need 1.6 mils in the debt service fund, and we would be applying that to this. Next slide, please. So I made that first point. Because that bond payment is shifting, it wouldn't be at any additional cost. Now, this is the advantage about doing this as well, in spite of the fact that we just got great prices on our paving. These short-term loans have been in the 2 to 3% range for quite some time. Front-loading that $1.5 million in paving at a very low interest rate provides significant financial benefit or impact, because we'd be doing those up front and avoiding what have tended to be the inflationary costs of 5% a year. I will also make the point, several years ago when interest rates weren't even as, interest rates were even higher than they are now. The first time in Bucks County I did this was in Newtown, and they did an extra $1 million in roads. And the first loan program we put out there came in at 1.5%. So those are very competitive. Banks like those loans. They're simple. They're guaranteed. And this essentially, though, allows us to start to really increase the road totals that we'd be paving. Can we go to the next slide, please? So I want to give at least a comparison with what we've paved previously with some comments that I have so this can be in context. So we're saying in the end, it would be $10.1 million in paving. Over the last 7 years, we've done 7.5. 5.1 million of that is from liquid fuels. And if you look at our own budgets, that math is relatively simple. It comes out to about 700,000 and change from that liquid fuels allocation. 2.3 million from the general fund over 7 years. And there's the grant money. I just want to point this out for the board because we know how difficult finding these resources are. You know, that money was paved over a period of 5 years, that $2.3 million from our capital reserve account. And it was this board then that had to address the fact that that account had that negative fund balance on it of over $2.3 million that we reconciled in 2018. So it was this current board that essentially reconciled those to account for the paving that had been done in those previous 5 years. Again, that $10.1 million is just a base level amount without asking anybody to pay any additional money and to really put a dent in the mileage that we're talking about. Next slide, please. So as I said, just using liquid fuels in this loan and the roads we're going to outline, I do want to point out something. I'm going to show you 3 years worth of roads. Those 3 years worth of roads just included 3 roads, including the big one in Silo, that are factored in here. So we would essentially, if we move forward with this, can you go back, please? Thank you. That we would be adding to this program moving forward. But this really is for illustrative purposes to start to show you the impact. Next slide, please. So based upon that 20-year blended average, right, we are sitting here factoring in the end that you can see the mileage of the 2022 road program. Now, as I pointed out, a lot of times if we do a 3-year program, the mileage will be much higher than that based upon the width of the road. But as you can see, by going to this right off the bat, our 3-year blended average is 4.86. Now we're talking about 6.9. Go to the next slide, please. Thank you. Is 6.9. But we're going to start doing some other things as well. You know, we've talked about, the township is going to begin focusing on doing some in-house paving every year. We don't have a massive staff, but we're going to start focusing on doing about 0.2 of a mile, maybe up to a 1/4 mile a year on roads, cul-de-sacs, what have you, that we can handle in-house. I'd like to also point out, because we've talked about this as well, this will be the first year in 2021 that we will start doing inlet repairs for next year's road program. Each of those inlets based on last year's pricing was $1,200. So if we start doing even 12 of those a year, that ends up being over 3 years, an extra $40,000, because in the end, when we bid these road contracts out, inlet repair is one of those items. If we can at least put a dent in that we do those in-house, we can also add to our paving dollar amounts that would be available moving forward. Next item, next slide, please. But in the liquid fuels budget, as I've mentioned, we pay for other things: public works labor, engineering, experts, reviews that we do, rock salt. So one of the things that I want to start talking about is to start taking those items and working to get those items out of liquid fuels, where we could possibly have available another $50,000 a year out of liquid fuels to go towards roads. The thing I like about this as a base level approach is it allows for guidelines for supervisors, especially when we start talking about general fund expenditures, to have some context for what we may want to do. If we know in the end our 3-year average is just under 5 miles, we can start putting together presentations of what additional general fund dollars would look like. And I do want to point out one other thing. As I said, there's 1.6 mils in that debt service fund that will be available. I I'm presenting a plan for 1 mil, right? I'm presenting a plan for 1 mil. So there's an additional 0.6 mils out there still for discussion. And to put that in perspective, every 1/10 of those mills on a 3-year loan will generate an extra $150,000 in paving for that year as part of a loan. Next slide, please. So in the end, this is the map. If you start to look at what's in blue, and we'll shrink this down into neighborhoods, you can see the effect of $2.3 million in paving in 2022 versus the other years where we're talking 3.5 miles or so a year that we've been getting. Can we go to the next slide, please? So if we take one of those, pulling down one of those neighborhoods and what that paving would look like. Next slide, please. These are the roads that would be included in that listing. And we put in there the last year paved, because I think that that's been obviously a point of discussion among residents and board members as well. Next slide, please. So, and this was also in the slide that we just showed as well, Fairfield and Farmview. Next slide, please. So here's the next neighborhood we'd look at broken down by street. If you go to the next slide, please. This is a breakout of those roads. It'll be a couple of pages long. As you can see, we're talking roads. Overlook was last done in 79, 82. Those roads are going to be 40 years old and over 40 years old next year. Next slide. We're in Yardley Meadows. As you can see, a lot of these roads are not significant in length, and so we would not necessarily expect to have to get to them, even every 20 years, but we believe it's time. Next slide. Stony Hill Homes, same thing. You can see the age. You can see the age. You can see the listing of the roads here. Next slide. Okay. Big Oak Bend, Mirror Lake Farms. Next slide, please. Highview Estates, Buck Creek Estates, 1 and 2, and Sandy Run. You can see we're talking about this is in blue again. Next slide. This would be a breakdown of the roads that would be included. You can see the age when they were last paved. Next slide. And that's it. If you could pull out and come back to the screen, I'd appreciate it. So while we can get in the weeds about the roads, and as I said, there's 3 that would obviously, we'd need 3 new roads with what we've done tonight at least. So, all I want to float past the board is this possibility that we can enhance this average. We can do so and have a really, even on the surface, every 3 years, a big $2.5 million road program, capture a lot of savings in doing it by doing this stuff up front, starting to plan additional roads that we can do in the general fund as well, at least with a framework for where are we with this gap. And frankly, for people that have been waiting a long time to have their roads paved, that essentially allows us to roll up 3 years at once. As you can see, by doing essentially 3 years worth of paving every 3rd year to get caught up and to start to get ahead of this. And I also want to point out the secondary impact and benefit of that is oftentimes our public works department is spending lots of time patching these roads, crack sealing these roads. And if we start knocking these out, particularly next year with a big road program, we even open up the possibility even more that their time on the road could be spent paving even more than the 1/4 mile or so that I have mentioned. And we wouldn't be spending as much money on just repair. It's like a car. You get to a point where the car's costing you so much money, it makes more sense to buy something new. but getting ourselves on this framework this way allows us to sort of memorialize this, to use that tax for that. And that's my presentation. I don't know if there's any questions, Suzanne, or how you want to proceed.
First of all, thank you. I do appreciate the work you put into it, and, having it out here tonight so that we can all think about it as we move forward, well ahead of the budget season at this point. Do any of the supervisors have anything they'd like to discuss in terms of this program? Okay, well, with that, Monica, is there any public comment?
Yes, Robert is on the line.
Excellent. Robert, can you state your full name and address, please?
Robert Abrams, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Robert
Yes,
Abrams, 652 Teach Drive. What you just presented, the school board just did. The auditor said there was $4 million of extra money, and all of a sudden that turned into $116,000. Well, I found $2.5 million of it. You know where I found it? I found it in the bond debt fund that got moved from the allocated fund to the general fund to get distributed so that they can go and create a new bond debt fund. That's a hidden tax increase. That's a money laundering operation, what you described. This is my public comment for tomorrow night, so I guess I'm practicing. What you set up here is a system where you take a fund that guarantees the outstanding bonds and you start to draw from it. And as you draw it down, the way I'm understanding it is it's based on budget. So now you can go back and add back into it whenever you feel like borrowing more money. Now, who goes and pays for that when you go and add back into it? Mr. Ferguson, it isn't you, because you don't have any skin in the game in this township. And that's the problem. You will not be responsible to that tax increase, but every one of us will be. Now take your money laundering operation and take it back to Newtown, because we don't need it here. Now I suggest all of you supervisors go dig deep into what he's doing and figure it out. And now I got a whole minute left over, and I'm going to give it back to you. Thank you. Have a good night.
Suzanne, I'm sorry, I have to answer that. That is not a money laundering operation. It is an effort that is done in municipalities throughout Pennsylvania. What I'm saying is, and let me make sure I'm clear, our bond debt that the debt service fund has essentially specifically been used for, the bond debt in that particular category is going down. Will not give us the ability to lend more, to borrow more money in any way. If a future board wants to borrow more money, it has nothing to do with this. So in the end, the presentation is, with the bond debt going down, the millage that's currently assigned to that is no longer needed in its entirety. And if the board would like to look to pave more roads, this would be an opportunity to apply the mill to a short-term loan in that debt service fund. It's not a bond service fund, into the debt service fund, to take a 3-year road loan out, a 3-year debt out, a short-term debt, and use that $1 million to pay for that loan. There's no money being shuffled. There's no money being reallocated. It would be to put a new loan into that debt service fund, period. That's it.
Dan, Fred had his hand up first.
I just want to reinforce what Kurt is saying. The debt service fund is to pay debt. Once a bond is satisfied, once a loan is satisfied, we no longer need that millage. But if we keep the millage to finance the short-term debt, that's not only appropriate, it's desired, because it keeps the taxes low, and it keeps us doing more things for the same money, and it's paid off in 3 years. We can't, as Mr. Ferguson has said, we can't establish a road millage because we're a second-class township, but we can take short-term debt and pay it off with debt service. It's not bond service, it's debt service. So anybody out there who is kind of confused, we paid off the credit card, and now we're taking a special deal on a new credit card with little interest for 3 years. We'll pay that down within the 3 years, and we can do it again and again and again without any extra tax burden.
And I also want to make sure, I'm sorry, Dan, and I know you have a question, that I'm clear. Okay. So if the board was to do this, it is an entirely transparent public process, meaning in the end, if the board said, we like this idea, let's do an extra $1.5 million in paving. One, that's over $1 million. So we have to fulfill the requirements of what's called the Unit Debt Act, which means we have to go to the state, give them all the information. Then we put this out for bid to accept rates from banks that would be publicly approved. So in the end, there's no shifting of anything. And I would just like to point out, in the debt service fund, we have a 7-year radio loan for the police department. We went to all Bucks County communities were required to go to this new bandwidth for radios, and it was a 7-year loan from the county, and that is where we pay for that loan as well in the debt service fund. Thank you, Dan.
Sure. It's a very interesting idea, and I know we'll dive more into it as we get closer to the budget season and all that. I almost think of this as, I don't want to say just an example, but because it's more than that. Obviously, it's thought out, and you're applying this approach to one of our main concerns in the township. There's also, if we have other priorities besides roads, whether it's that whole 1.6, 1.0, 0.6, whatever breakdown it is, if it would be useful, I'm thinking of other infrastructure improvements that we know we might have, right? Inlets, stormwater management issues, whatever it may be, we might be able to apply this same approach or some combination thereof to something like that as well, right?
That's correct, Dan.
Right. So
but let me just point this out.
Sure.
The reason that's a valuable tool is there's only certain things that you can assign millage to, right? Debt service is one of them. And again, people think of debt service as long-term debt and bonds. But that's not. Essentially, more creative communities now are using it in the way that I've just described, and not just Newtown.
Now, Kurt, is this dependent upon us over the next several months, the sewer sale going through, so we can then use the proceeds to pay down debt as we've been looking at? Is it wholly dependent upon that, or no?
It would be affected, but not wholly dependent. No.
Okay. I think we'll have a better idea. I think what did the article say? End of March, when the PUC rules on the Delcora deal, to see what level of risk we may still have with our own deal because of what the administrative law judge just said about that deal. I think the next round of really good information for us to understand what risk we may still have with our setup is when the PUC is set to rule on the Delcora deal at the end of March. They don't have to follow the ALJ's recommendation, but they often do. So I think I'm very interested to see what comes out of that, and if we have any feedback from PFM or Obermeyer in terms of how that relates to us. And that might be an executive session discussion, but I think that plays into what you're looking at right now, big picture wise. But I know you are trying to get ahead of things to prep, your game planning, which I appreciate. But that's just a piece of the puzzle over the next 9 months or so that'll be obviously play into it a bit.
That's true, Dan. And I would much rather have this discussion and vet this topic out for a period of months than the condensed time frame of the budget process. So
I agree wholeheartedly. I appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you then. And there's no further public comment, right, Monica, on that? So we can move along to agenda item number 14, which is the solicitor's report.
Yes, thank you. First, we had an executive session. It started at 6:15 tonight and went till 7:30 when this meeting started. Supervisors Blundy, McCartney, Weiss, and Lewis were present, along with Mr. Ferguson and myself. Litigation items, informational items, and real estate items were discussed at the executive session. First, under my solicitor's report, the public and the board and everybody in attendance may recall that last meeting, we approved the advertisement of ordinance number 424 to amend the police pension ordinance, and that's to conform the ordinance to the collective bargaining agreement with respect to certain terms related to age of retirement, for a full police pension qualification, as well as for the contribution levels for the individual officers that was set forth in the collective bargaining agreement. Those terms were included in the amended ordinance and was properly advertised. It is now ready for board consideration to approve tonight. So a motion would be appropriate if you're so inclined.
I make a motion to approve ordinance 424, amending the police pension.
Second.
Seconded by Dan. Is there any discussion? Is there any public comment?
No public
comment.
Okay, with that, I call the question. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye and raising your hand.
Aye.
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 Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Next item, and Mr. Ferguson alluded to this item, as the consideration of a resolution authorizing approval of a memorandum of understanding and a deed of easement with Pennsylvania American Water concerning the community bike trail. This is the location off Oxford Valley Road, adjacent to where the development I think we approved last meeting with respect to the driveway. I know Mr. Renner was concerned and did point out some issues with respect to the material to be used on the driveway. But the easement here would be from Pennsylvania American back to the township to allow the continuation of the bike trail here. My partner, Barbara Kirk, prepared the necessary paperwork, and it's been reviewed and accepted by the officials of Pennsylvania American Water. So it would be appropriate if the board is again so inclined to approve consider the resolution and approve it for the approval of the memorandum of understanding and the deed of easement as indicated.
So moved.
Thank you, Fred. Is there a second? Thank you, James. Any discussion? Yes, Dan?
Yeah. Dave, with respect to the discussion at the last meeting, I was flipping through the language here and I didn't see anything with respect to the easement itself, not the MOU, but the easement itself oftentimes would cover, what types of cover types they might use or not use in proximity to the bike path. Is that addressed in the easement itself, or was that limited just to the plan drawings?
That was in the plan drawing, as far as I know. The easement itself is, I've reviewed it. I'm not going to say I look for that specifically, but as I look at it right now, I don't see anything about the specific materials noted, but it should be in the plan drawings for sure. And that will control anything to be filed at that point.
Okay. And the plan drawings serve as an exhibit to the easement?
I believe that they are. Yes, they are.
Okay.
Yep. It's Exhibit B. Yep.
And Dave, is this something, conversations from beforehand, is this something I should recuse myself from or no?
No, I don't believe you have that. No, there's nothing pending. I know you did last time. And I appreciate the fact you did. You're not required to. You weren't required to then. You're not required to now.
Okay.
Any other discussion? Monica, is there any public comment?
There is no public comment.
And with that, I call the question. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye and raising your hand.
Aye.
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 Motion passes 5-0.
Okay, thank you. Next, the board and the public may recall that there's been, over a period of time, a new pump station located at the end of Stackhouse Drive, and it required going over some private properties. One in particular, 2308 Stackhouse Drive, and in order to access the area for the new pump station, as well as eventually to have a permanent easement. What this resolution does is recognizes the memorandum of understanding between the property owner, which is actually a trust, the Sheila Scott Trust, and the township for 2 easements, a temporary easement for construction purposes, and the second one would be the permanent easement for access and the actual sewer lines that would extend from the pump station outward. So this is something that's been going for some time, but now we're to the point where this is very helpful to us to accomplish this so we can move ahead on the project. Again, this was drafted by my partner, Barbara Kirk, along with the attorney representing the property owner, and it should be, and I know the staff has seen it as well, it's appropriate for consideration, and if the board is inclined to approve tonight.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Fred. Second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, James. Any discussion? Yes, Dan?
You anticipated the hand raise. Dave, I'm curious. I know this has obviously been a topic of discussion with the sewer authority and the board for quite some time. Oftentimes, when we get to this point, the sewer authority may have a motion that they make or recommendation to the board. Has that occurred in this case for this particular issue?
I don't know that off the top of my head. I know if it's been considered. I don't have that. It's not in the paperwork that I have. I don't have any indication that they oppose it. I think it's been, if it went before them, it was probably quite some time ago. I say that because the discussions that occurred over several months to finalize the costs and everything else that came about with this. So it may have occurred sometime in the middle of last year. I don't recall.
Yeah. And if it hasn't changed since then I would say they're okay with it since I was the liaison back then. If it's consistent with what we were looking at back then that would answer that.
As far as I know, it was over time. Nothing drastic has changed. I don't know if anybody else has any comments.
Kurt has an answer for us.
Okay.
So Dan, I can't give you all the details now, but the framework that the sewer authority set that was outlined by Barbara Kirk at the time, up to a certain dollar amount that we would go, it's within that confines. It was nailing down all of the tedious details that took long.
Yeah, it was
that's good enough for me.
Getting the silt fence and certain other types of items that were satisfactory to the property owner to make sure that and make sure that stonework was not going to be disturbed. That kind of thing were things that really kind of delayed where we were. But we're here, so at least we're to the point now where I think everybody's satisfied with the final product. So
works for me. Thank you.
Okay.
Anything else? Any public comment?
There is no public comment.
So with that, we'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye and raising your hand.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. The last thing I have is an interesting item, and I know Kurt will probably want to weigh in on this as well. The motion, and I'll give some background after I read out the proposed motion. The motion will be to approve the distribution of restitution proceeds provided by the Pennsylvania Attorney General's Office regarding Boucher and James overcharges as set forth in the detailed itemization to affected developers on the condition that acceptance of receipt by the affected developers constitutes the limit of any payment from Lower Makefield Township on those accounts identified in the Attorney General's restitution proceeds list. That's a long motion. Let me break that down a little bit. I know a lot of folks are aware that Boucher and James has been under investigation for overcharges, not just in Lower Makefield, but for numerous municipalities and entities in this area. In fact, I received phone calls, one from a solicitor up in the Lehigh Valley, another one from another solicitor in a municipality in Central Bucks County, also both affected by the overcharges. However, Lower Makefield, for better for worse, won the day in the sense that our restitution number is the highest of anybody that's on the list. And a little background on that. I was called by the Deputy Attorney General, I'm going to say early in the summer of 2020 about the issues, and then scheduled a phone conference with Mr. Ferguson, the Deputy Attorney General, and also I think a couple investigators to discuss some of the issues. With that, I believe they contacted, and Kurt, jump in if I'm missing anything. contacted Mr. Ferguson's office, different possible accounts that were affected. And eventually then in early December, I received a phone call from the Attorney General's office saying that they were ready to issue a check. A check in the amount of almost $350,000 was issued, I think received by the township in late December. And then after that, and they had a whole list of accounts that were apportioned for the monies that were to be given in terms of restitution. And just for everybody's benefit, for lack of a better term, this is found money. It's good found money, but it's not something that was expected. So what we're doing now is it's been broken down into basically three categories. One, those areas where developers are overcharged for engineering reviews and things like that. A second category where there may be monies that go back to the Commonwealth or some other entity in the form of grants or something like that. That's a second pot. And then the third one would be dollars that are actually due back to the township. We're talking now in terms of monies that will be given back to the developers as listed in the outlined accounts that were given to us by the Attorney General's office and also identified by staff and Mr. Ferguson in their review. It's important to note that the way this motion is worded, before the entities will receive the funds that are apportioned, they will have to sign something that indicates that they understand the conditions that are set forth in this particular motion. So they're receiving money, but we're protecting the township. Not that the township did anything wrong, but we don't want the township to be on the hook for anything more. That actually is the responsibility of Bechet and James. And if they receive something in the future from some other effort against Bechet and James, the township will not have to be responsible for that. So sorry for the long-winded way to describe it, but that's kind of how we got where we are. So
I guess I'll make the motion to approve distribution of the restitution proceeds provided by Pennsylvania Attorney General's office regarding Bechet and James overcharges as set forth in the detailed itemization to affect developers on the condition that acceptance of receipt by the affected developers constitutes the limit of any payment from Lower Makefield Township on those accounts identified by the Attorney General's restitution proceeds list.
Is there a second? Thank you, Dan. Kurt?
I want to point out one item for the board, just so we're clear. That list, that laundry list, was included and attached to the agenda for transparency for the public to see, right behind our bills list and our interfund transfers list. This list as well will be attached as those warrant lists and transfers inevitably approved. A couple other points. One of the discussions that we'd had was where we stood with certain people if they owed the township money. Those have all been resolved, all of them, except for, and bear with me, I'm not going to give you a project name, one or two that have ongoing projects that amount to under $1,000. The big outstanding items that we've had, we've received payments up, including yesterday, to have those done. John, I'm glad you're smiling. So that was something we focused on for the last 2 weeks to make sure that we resolve unpaid accounts before someone would be given a check back to them when they owed the township money. As I'd said to the board, for those items, those one or two items, even though they are much less significant in dollar amount, we will get those accounts squared before those checks are provided in the document that they have to sign. So, but the big ones that we talked about are all paid for.
Go ahead, Dan.
Kurt, really, kind of in the same frame. So the list that was provided, is that in a court document somewhere that where the township's ordered to pay these amounts, or is that something that, through our due diligence and reviewing our own numbers, we feel that of that 350, whatever it is, that 125 and change is allotted to these folks? I guess that's what I want to better understand.
So the township received a list from the Attorney General's office that outlined projects. So, for example, if we had a project that was outlined, and I'm not even suggesting this is case, I'm winging it. If we had a project that was described as 2019 Township Road Program, we know that's ours. Dog Park, that's ours. Sandy Run, that's ours. But if something would say, X, Y, and Z townhome development, we know in the end that would have been part of the escrow. Now, I will also tell you, we've gotten very detailed with this review, Dan, where if someone listed a project and there was a $300 fee that would be overcharged, we looked back on our records and said, well, back in the day when this $300 fee was charged, so for example, this board has recently enacted a sketch plan fee that we didn't have in the past. So in the end, we could look back on our records and see, well, there's a $300 reimbursement for a project that only submitted a sketch plan and never moved forward. And we knew we didn't have a sketch plan fee back then. We would know that would be township money. So the list that you have there is the project list that we've pared down based on the Attorney General's list that we are confident would be money that would be owed back to developers in terms of overcharges as part of escrow collections that we would have had.
Thank you. And then you mentioned a few names that I wanted to be clear too. We obviously have ongoing litigation with Sandy Run. We have some other big projects that they did that they arguably had major issues with in terms of the dog park and the quiet zone issues, and probably one or two others. Can you clarify in that settlement amount, that $350K, are any of, and I think I've read this before, but just to be clear for everyone else, that doesn't preclude us or doesn't impact any of our other litigation ongoing. Is that correct?
That's correct. And the main reason for that is this is for overcharging and just what they overcharged every entity. That doesn't protect them from basically negligence that we would be talking about, and that whatever they committed, because that negligence would have damages that would far exceed whatever their review cost would be, potentially, to your point. So, yes.
That's all. Thank you.
Any other discussion?
Happy I don't have to get into the collections business again.
Any public comment?
There's no public comment.
Okay, with that, I call the question. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye and raising your hand.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, next on the hit parade, and near the end of my presentation tonight, there are 5 matters of appeals to the zoning hearing board for the board's consideration tonight. I will get to them hopefully fairly quickly but comprehensively. The first, Gina Gustin is requesting a special exception for a bed and breakfast and/or boarding house use and a variance to increase the existing non-conforming rear yard setback to accommodate for a new patio roof for the property located at 3 Ridge Avenue. The public may be aware, I know the board is, that there have been numerous issues with this property going back well over a year, and some concerns about the true intentions of the applicant and the property owner. We've actually had 2 different appeals now. One was withdrawn, and then this one was submitted that asked for different types of relief. Based on that, we would recommend opposition in this particular case, and that would require a board vote.
So moved.
Second.
Second. I'll give it to you, John.
Thank you.
Any discussion?
I want the blowtorch and forceps.
Is there any public comment?
There's no public comment.
With that, I call the question. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Next, and I'm going to pronounce this name differently from my partner, Mike Chabelle, because their relatives are cousins, but there's not a conflict because it's not a direct relationship. But John Shabel and Ruth Harris are requesting a variance for the property located at 357 Ramsey Road in order to permit the construction of an in-ground pool, patio, and storage shed resulting in an increase in pervious surface and decrease in accessory structure setback. These are fairly common applications before the zoning hearing board. They're well equipped to handle these. We would recommend deferring to the zoning hearing board, but if there's a contrary sentiment by the board, please advise, and we'll obviously take your cue. Hearing none. Next, Hydroscape Inc. is requesting a variance for Patrick O'Dunn for the property located at 268 Springdale Terrace in order to permit the construction of an in-ground pool with decking, a bluestone patio, a gazebo, resulting in greater than permitted impervious surface. I was advised by Katie McVan, who, by the way, has been tremendously helpful in providing this information to us, that while part of the property is in the flood zone, the area that's actually where this project is proposed to occur is not in the flood zone. So under those circumstances, we recommend deferral, but if, again, there's a contrary sentiment, I'll certainly accept and welcome any type of motion from the board if they want to participate. Hearing none. Next, Michael and Rachel Rubacha are requesting a variance for the property located at 1072 Randolph Drive in order to permit the construction of a patio and walkway resulting in greater than permitted impervious surface. Again, fairly common, especially in this last year or two. So we recommend deferral unless there's a contrary sentiment from the board. Hearing none, the final matter for your consideration tonight, Timothy and Michelle Chamberlain are requesting a variance for property located at 19 Fairway Drive in order to permit the construction of a rear addition resulting in a decrease in the rear yard setback. The setback difference is going from 45 feet to 42 feet. So we, again, under these circumstances, we recommend deferral to the zoning hearing board unless there's a contrary sentiment. Hearing none, that's all I have. Thank you.
Agenda item number 16. I feel like that's a typo on my agenda, so I'm going to go right along to, is there zoning inspections and planning, right?
No,
You're on mute.
We just left the category in there mistakenly. My apologies.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Then we're on to public comment. Monica, is there any public comment?
Yes, Lisa is on the line.
Excellent. Lisa, state your full name and address, please. Lisa, do you need to unmute?
Lisa Tenney, 156 Pinnacle Circle.
Please go ahead.
Yes. So in the future, I would like more. Hold on. I would like you to provide more time dedicated for the Board of Supervisors to discuss suggestions and recommendations of the different citizen committees, the historic committees, traffic, safety, environmental, architectural review. Please incorporate all their knowledge and comments into your Board of Supervisors meetings, as it's a lot of meetings for citizens to follow, and I believe they have great suggestions, and of course it would be great for transparency of what's really going on here. Also, I think that I would like to know how a development roads get on the list of approval for being paved. I think when I called in the last meeting, I mentioned about, I think it's North Esther Road was paved, South Esther Road is in need of paving. Now our whole development is starting to crack, so I want to know the procedure for that. So I'm going to take a breather and maybe you can go through the steps.
Do you want me to answer that, Suzanne?
So technically, Lisa, we try to have public comment during the agenda item when it's on the agenda. And since we had not only a road proposal discussion, but also a conversation about bids already. But that's being said.
Okay, that's fine. So can I...
Lisa, if I could just continue, it's not a short answer, but Kurt, if you want to try to give a line or two on it, that essentially sums it up.
Sure. Our public works director, who drives these roads every day, makes assessments on what roads can still be patched and improved in-house, and then what list gets to the point where they get paved. We probably have upwards of 40 miles of the township that we would say is getting close to that point. And the idea of the program, as I presented, was to start to work to get caught up. So we will make note of the roads that you've talked about and make sure that they're on our list to review. And it would be an engineering analysis and assessment based upon where they fall, based upon all the other roads in the township.
Okay, that would be perfect. I just worry. I don't see our road or any road in our development on that. And it does get a lot of walking and traffic daily. So I just want us to be on the radar and not overlooked. So thank you. Also, I would like to mention, I'd like the Board of Supervisors to go on record about enforcing the existing tree ordinance, not giving any exceptions, because you really haven't given any exceptions to any other entity. And the Bucks County Planning has recommended to not give the waiver.
Lisa,
So
are you back on the Cricket Preserve, Lisa?
Yeah. So, by the way, I believe that I can, under the First Amendment, redress grievances, right? So when you cut me off and give me a time limit, I can't state what, as a public citizen who pays taxes a lot of, should get to say in a public forum. And it's a COVID, so I can't even be at a meeting. So I appreciate you, it's not at this time. Don't talk at this time. You only get this amount of minutes at this time. I recommend you go talk to your neighbor to the left of you and to the right and across the street and ask them what they think. Because I'm pretty sure the answer they've given me is it's a done deal. What kind of government are you operating if people think that September 19 Planning Commission, they already thought it was a done deal? You better make it right.
With that, Lisa, thank you for your comments, and I hope you have a nice evening.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Is there any more public comment?
Yes, Zach is on the line.
Excellent. Zach, please state your full name and address.
Zachary Rubin, 1661 Covington Road. At the first meeting in January, the organizational meeting, a question was raised about moving public comment to the front of the agenda. That question has not been addressed. I am now requesting moving public comment to the front of the meeting. Will the chairperson agendize the issue, or will the board discuss it now, or will the chairperson simply set the BOS meeting agenda with the public comment at the beginning?
Zach, I think you'll recall at that meeting, it was Supervisor Lewis who asked me the question. And I think that is something that the supervisors can and should discuss. I acknowledge that there is no perfect answer to this. Some people point out that we should look to how other townships do it. Other townships, by and large, follow this method, but I don't necessarily say we should always do what other townships are doing. I myself am a little startled that it's 11 o'clock. Had I foreseen this, I might have tried to rejigger the agenda a bit. But if the public comment about, is about public comment at 11 o'clock, then it's a hard discussion to have.
Well, let me just say, you're making my point that it is after 11 o'clock to have public comment, but you said it's a conversation. So my question is, when are you going to have this conversation?
I'm not going to have it now.
So my question is, will you agendize it? Beg your pardon, will you agendize it?
I don't think that's how it has to be taken care of, but I appreciate your input, Zach.
So you're not answering my question. When are you going to have this conversation? It's almost March now.
Zach, you and I have had this conversation a number of times. So I appreciate that you don't think I'm responding to you in a way that you'd like me to hear. I don't think this is the purpose of public comment. I would point out that, we as supervisors are reachable in a lot of different ways. And you've heard some of the supervisors tonight mention the comments that they get and the reach out that they get from the community, all different ways. So that's all I have to say about public comment at this time.
Let me just say, I'm not asking to have responding to me. I'm asking you to respond to Supervisor Lewis's question in the January meeting where you responded and said, yes, that's an important conversation. So my question is, when are you going to respond to Supervisor Lewis's question? When will you have this conversation?
Go ahead, Fred. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, all I can say is what's been said in the past, that in this township, the chair is responsible for the agenda. And, I give the same respect that when I was chair was given to me, that I will honor the chair's prerogative to place non-agenda public comment wherever she desires. So, and I have to remind those that are still listening that public comment is allowed all through the meeting, from beginning to end. It is only those comments made that are not related to the agenda, which are reserved at the end of the meeting. And as Chair Blundy has stated, almost every township in the lower half of Bucks County, I haven't researched every township or a municipality, reserves non-agenda public comment at the end of its meeting. Every committee, every standing committee of this township reserves public comment at the end of the meeting. And as was stated last year, unless it's changed, even your homeowners association reserves public comment or resident comment at the end of the meeting. So although I am, at this point, it is not under my control, I will support whatever Chair Blundy's decision is going forward. That's my opinion.
And with that, your 3 minutes are up, Mr. Rubin. So I hope you have a good evening and good night. Monica, is there any other public comment?
We have Robert on the line.
Good evening, Robert. Please state your full name and address for the record.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, Robert
Yes.
Abrams, 652 Teach Drive. What I got from a just previous conversation with Mr. Rubin was the chairs decided to shove it under the rug, not look at it, not care about it, not care about the constituents that are up at this point in time that may have something to do in the morning. And clearly, the chair needs to be replaced and step down. Now, let me make a comment to what Mr. Weiss said, what Supervisor Weiss said, that the credit card is paid off. The credit card is not paid off. Not unless you personally paid off all those golf course bonds. That fund there is based on size of budget, which means when you borrow from it, you have the opportunity at the next meeting to replace it, which means it's an ongoing tax increase, which means the township manager couldn't give a rat's rear end about because he doesn't have to pay it. He doesn't live here. It's a way of laundering money out of one account and into another. It's dead fact that simple. And that's what's being done. If you can't work within your means, then you can't do your job. And if you can't do your job, we need someone to do your job. Now, everyone else has worked within the means here. They haven't had to borrow from a debt fund. And it should continue this way. To open up this community to unlimited annual tax increases is the most absurd thing I've heard. Even my parrot's upset. Now, something's got to be done here where the funds that are being handled here are being handled responsibly. And I will stay on the phone for my next 1 minute and 2 seconds. Go. I'm listening, Mr. Weiss. I'm listening. If we had the money from your cell tower that you were going to give $50,000 for, we could pave the roads. We're probably down about $3,000.
Well, Bob, you're giving me your minute, so I'm going to take it. First of all, I'll start from the end and I'll work myself back to the beginning. You know, I have no problem listening to your statements, but I will say that the $2 million plus the interest from day one is still with us. Not a penny has been spent. Number two, your accusations of money laundering to our manager is not only inappropriate, but is wrong. That service is allowed. We pay X number of dollars to that service. When the debt is forgiven, we're satisfied. It is up to the Board of Supervisors to create more debt, long-term, short-term, it doesn't make any difference. It's a decision of the board. In the past, before us, boards have used debt service as a means to pay the bills. When this board took office, we were in such dire straits, we had to use bond fund to pay the damn salaries of the employees of this township. We were broke because people like you let misappropriation of funds. And, you know, you raise an interesting point. I've been dealing with money for almost 50 years. And I know you're a businessman too. I've listened. I don't know how you've run your business, but I've not only run my business properly and been able to retire very comfortably, but have been dealing with government entities and nonprofit organizations for 20 or 30 years, dealing with budgets much higher than this, with much more government oversight than this. And I can tell you that Mr. Ferguson has done more for this township to right its financial ship than any single individual in the last 10 years. So forgive me if I get a little upset that you malign an individual who has been so good to this township, has turned this township around. And as far as I'm concerned, the major single force for our Moody's upgrade and the removal of our negative outlook. So please forgive me if I get a little hot under the cover for someone who has maligned an individual, who tries to malign an individual, who should be kissing him. So thank you for giving me your minute.
You can say whatever you want. Don't see it that way. And yes,
I did.
Yes, I have done a successful business.
Thank you both, and I hope you both have a good evening. Good night, Robert. Monica, is there any other public comment?
No further public comment.
Okay. Moving along to agenda item 18, discussion items. Hearing none. Moving along to agenda item number 19, supervisor reports. I'm first, and I really would only be repeating a lot of what we already talked about in terms of the EAC and their review of proposals that are pending, which are all viewable. Also, we talked about planting more trees in October, and we're working with Monica on that. And that's about sums it up. So that goes to James.
Nothing to report at this time.
Thank you, James. Fred?
Nothing to report at this time.
Thank you. John?
Yes, the Citizens Traffic Commission met yesterday where we talked about some issues related to the current development, which was discussed today in terms of traffic discussion and also discussion around Regency and Big Oak and discussion around, and I had pulled it out from years ago, the pavilion section that was supposed to be built for Regency and walkways connecting that to Regency. And so that is bubbled up as an issue of some note for folks. And one last thing, the Veterans Committee, I just want to echo what Monica had mentioned. If you know a Lower Makefield or Yardley veteran, it's important to make sure that they're part of our Veterans Memorial. Their service is special, and you'll see a recurring television display and how you can do that. And finally, if you're not a veteran and you haven't served, there's still a way you can help by buying a paver. You can do that online as well. So that's my report for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. And Dan?
Sure, I'll be brief. The Planning Commission met, primarily just reviewed their annual report, which will be delivered to the board. No major items covered at this last Planning Commission meeting. HARB, the Historical Architectural Review Board, also met. I know this is very interesting, but the Rite Aid signs that we all approved a couple of meetings, I think last meeting, have been changed again. They brought back the red. Anyway, well, it'll be coming in front of us again to vote on. I like the changes. And they also had a presentation from a developer that wants to potentially develop some township land over in the Edgewood Village area. Kurt, I told them rather than I said the best course of action if they're really interested in talking about township land is to talk to you first to understand all the ramifications of doing such things and present ideas, et cetera, before it starts going in front of boards and committees and everything else. So hopefully if they are very interested in doing this, they'll go through you to do that. So it would be more appropriate. And then the last thing, Kurt, I think this is for you. I've had a couple committee folks, committee chairs reach out to me and ask me about the receiving the agenda for board meetings. I think Barbara used to send out an email to a whole bunch of committee chairs and other people with that email, and they've asked why it hasn't. I just said there's been some changes to certain folks, but I would let you know in case you wanted to reinstitute that.
We will. I think I think in the end, I apologize. I think that went to like 25 people, quite frankly.
Yeah, it was a lot.
Getting that done and getting everything. That was Nicole. We'll make sure that continues.
And that's kind of what I told them. It's that we're shuffling new staff and organizing things, so we'll get caught up on that. But that's all I
Well,
have.
unless anyone gets too concerned, we celebrated a retirement of a staff person, and we are now, onboarding somebody who's taking over a new role, and there's little hiccups along the way, but,
to be expected.
We'll all get better at it.
And I will announce that person is Katie McVan, who gave kudos to regarding her reporting that you had on your zoning hearing board applications. So when she's in that position, she'll be able to assist development and projects as well. She'll be a fantastic addition. We'll get it all squared away. Thanks.
Great. Okay, well then moving on, other business. Okay, appointments to boards and commissions. Do you have any appointments or reappointments, Fred?
I'd like to reappoint Jill Laurinaitis to the Electronic Media Advisory Council.
Second.
Excellent. Any discussion? I don't know if we discussed this, but any discussion? If not,
I was just going to say that I personally have experienced working with Jill in a number of township areas, and she has been just a tremendous asset to the community, and I welcome her reappointment.
oh, I will say the Falcons won tonight. Yay, Jill. I know you're not actually on the team. Maybe you're the extra person, but another two years in a row, the girls have won the championship, the title for our area. So yay. And Jill's heavily involved because her daughter's on the team. So. Okay. Well, then with that, all those in favor of the reappointment. I'm sorry?
Call the question on Jill so she gets her vote.
Yeah, no, I'm mumbling that right now. All those in favor of reappointment of Jill, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Excellent. Whoa.
Yeah.
Carries 5-0. All right. And there being no further business before the board, this meeting is adjourned. Have a good evening, everybody. Thank you.
Oh, Suzanne? I'm sorry. I noticed, Chief, we have a snow emergency beginning at midnight. Is that the case?
We do. We just put out the snow emergency, and we opened up the Emergency Operations Center for anyone who has any issues or problems to give us a call. And it'll be effective until further notice. We'll wait and see how the snow plays out and the weather affects us.
Thanks, Sean. And I like your glasses, Chief.
Thank you.
Nice.
And do we have to reopen the meeting? Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Stay safe.